Chapter 251. The middle-aged man's warning was completely for the sake of the gold coin. But when he closed the door again, he didn't know what he saw. When he leaned against the door, his face was as pale as a vampire's, and his whole body was listless. He kept muttering to himself, "They're here! They're here!" Burn Cinder glanced at William and moved to the window. He opened a gap and looked outside. After a while, he turned his head and shook his head, indicating that he did not see anything. In other words, the six of them did not sense any danger. William raised his eyebrows. He walked upstairs and said, "Just sleep in peace. We're hunters, but they're not." They nodded. They went upstairs to sleep. This neutral territory was filled with strangeness. They were only staying here for a night. They even had the intention to go to the East Sea metropolis. If they were really frightened by the vampires in the town, they might as well go home. Time passed. After a night, William had a good night's sleep, and nothing unexpected happened. However, when everyone went out early in the morning, the middle-aged owner of the hotel died in the lobby. His blood was not sucked dry, but his whole body was twisted into a twisted-dough twist by a huge force. He had a gold coin in his mouth, and his eyes were filled with fear. William frowned when he saw this. He informed the guards in the town that we're leaving. Okay. Burn Cinder picked up the gold coin in the mouth of the dead man and went to inform the guards. A neutral lord could build a town in his territory. The mayor was usually his subordinate. Although the soldiers in the town were commanded by the mayor, the real military power belonged to the lord. It was still raining heavily outside. The sky was still gloomy and cold. After the mayor found out about the death of the hotel boss, he did not investigate William and the others. He did not investigate the cause of the hotel boss death either. He even sent the guards to escort them out of the town. It was as if he was sending off the king of hell. They rode on their horses and walked towards the East Sea metropolis in the wind and rain. Another 3 days passed. They passed by many towns, and the situation in these towns was the same. In this rainy weather, every household's door was closed, and it was difficult to find any clues. William was getting impatient. He wanted to get straight to the point and enter the East Sea metropolis to find out what was going on. After all, East Sea City wasn't like the small towns outside. There were millions of people inside, and even if the vampires were all officials, they wouldn't capture people and suck their blood without restraint. Usually, the smaller the place, the easier it was for trouble to occur. For example, the Emerald Grand Duchy. The royal family and nobles were all vampires. However, the citizens of the duchy were still living well. Just some rumors about vampires didn't have much of an impact. Even the Freedom Alliance players who had entered the Emerald Grand Duchy a year earlier did not find any clues about vampires in the Emerald Grand Duchy. Even if there were any clues to the mission, they would often be cut off at a certain point, until more and more players joined the vampire quest to participate in that secret mission. But when all the players' clues began to point to the royal family's dignitaries, only then did the players gradually shift their target to the high and mighty kings, royals, and nobles. But no matter how incredulous the players were, that was the truth. As they neared the East Sea metropolis, Diablo walked along the way and couldn't help but say in a deep voice, "Your Highness, along the way, besides a few soldiers and citizens, we didn't see any city officials. Are they intentionally avoiding us?" "That's right. Everyone says that there are vampires here, but I didn't see any of the town mayors. I didn't see any of them requesting us to deal with the vampires," Wales said in confusion. Burn Cinder smiled and said, "Maybe the town mayors are afraid of revenge. It's said that Lord Bernard of the East Sea metropolis is very powerful. He has hundreds of thousands of soldiers under him. It doesn't make sense that he can't deal with a few vampires. If the vampires really want to take revenge on the town mayors, will the vampires be able to withstand Bernard's wrath? Over the past few days, we can confirm that there are definitely vampires in this land. They don't attack many times, and there's no pattern to their attacks. Their targets are usually young men and women, and most of them are commoners. They rarely target slaves. But everyone should have heard that the East Sea metropolis officials aren't the vampires' targets. We can assume that the East Sea metropolis officials are powerful professionals. But logically speaking, the blood of professionals should taste better, right? Then is it possible that Lord Bernard of the East Sea Metropolis is a vampire? Or perhaps he had some sort of compromise with the vampires. When everyone heard Alec's words, they fell into deep thought. William didn't say anything along the way. He only said that there were definitely vampires in the East Sea Metropolis, and the rest of them could make their own guesses. But let's not talk about it. The 3 legendary and 2 epic experts were not stupid. After a series of discussions, they had already linked the vampires and Lord Bernard of the East Sea Metropolis together. But everything had to be based on evidence. Words were not proof. But sometimes, even if they had evidence, it was useless. For example, in William's previous life, after the players were defeated by the Darkness Invasion, almost all of them became members of the Emerald Grand Duchy. The vampires naturally attacked them. But the vampires discovered that drinking the blood of the Chosen Ones was like eating sh*T. The blood was poisonous, and there was sh*T in the blood. The Chosen Ones were not fit to be their food. After that, they were no longer interested in attacking the players. But the Chosen Ones were very powerful and could be resurrected. This made the king and nobles, vampires, treat the players very well. They gave the players various missions to kill the vampires. But the players were curious. They were relentless and kept collecting clues about vampires. Whether it was vampires from enemy countries or vampires from their own country, they didn't want to let go of any of them. Even if there were nobles, vampires, who tried to divert their attention to vampires from enemy countries, the players still refused to do so. As time passed, the players found many clues. There was a lot of evidence that showed that the nobles and royal families in their camp were vampires. However, this feeling was like the saying, "You can't see the true face of a mountain because you're in the mountain." The players' faction was the Emerald Grand Duchy, but you told me that the leaders of our faction were all vampires. Who would believe that? In the early stages of version 3.0, the players thought that the so-called evidence was definitely used by the enemy vampires to divert their attention. After all, how many people would suspect that the leader of their camp was a vampire? Even if there were very few vampires, and they were the targets of attacks on the forum. But it was a pity that it was the truth. Whether it was version 1.0, 2.0, or 3.0, every main storyline was filled with conspiracies and darkness, which made the players suffer. As the truth was revealed one by one, aside from disbelief, the players could only widen their eyes in a daze. But what William had to do now was he had to stir up the muddy waters. Weren't the vampires awesome? Weren't they able to disguise as nobles and officials? He did not need evidence. I only need to see you, kill you, and let you return to your original vampire form. At that time, you guys who don't dare to reveal your true form can only suffer in silence, unable to say anything. After all, even during a battle, as long as the vampires did not want to revert to their original form, they would not do so unless they were killed. In William's previous life, how many players had dared to attack the boss of their own camp? The players did not dare to do it, and they were unable to do it. William had the courage and strength to do it. When the 6 of them passed by some towns, the local vampires knew that they were not a match for them, so they allowed the 6 of them to enter the East Sea Metropolis. Would William be afraid? Of course, he would be afraid. He would be fearful, but he would be afraid. That was human nature. Fear was the driving force behind his desire to become stronger. 2 days later, he arrived at the East Sea Metropolis. He was here to take revenge for his subordinates. He did not want to create trouble for Lord Bernard of the East Sea Metropolis. Bernard, the Lord of East Sea City, had actually gone to obstruct his mission. William did not mind changing the difficulty of the A+ level mission to S level. They were all neutral lords. None of them had any backing. I have so many players under me. Do you really think I can outlast you guys? Chapter 252. The East Sea Metropolis was a coastal city in the magical fantasy era. It was not as clean as the inland cities. Most of the commoners here fished or farmed for a living. There were fishing boats coming and going all the time. After William and his companions entered the city, they discovered that the streets were filled with dirty puddles. Rotten fish could be seen everywhere. The stench in the air was unbearable for the outsiders. Although most of the roads in the city were paved with limestone, the cleanliness was far from perfect. As they walked, they would often step on some filth. This was a city built near the sea. There were many ports along the coastline. Near the inland, there was an endless stretch of towering city walls. But the city walls were far from the last line of defense. The construction of the East Sea metropolis started from the inside out. It was constantly expanding outwards. In the center was a cliff that was hundreds of meters tall. The huge and magnificent castle on the cliff was the real core of the city. The lower the terrain, the worse the environment. If the low-lying areas on both sides of the cliff belonged to the commoners, then the castles were the residences of the rich and powerful. As for the magnificent castle on the top of the cliff, it was the heaven where the gods lived. This was the real neutral territory. The Lord used his authority to the extreme. The trusted subordinates of the Lord also enjoyed a lot of authority. The commoners in the territory were very free. There were not many laws restricting them. But in the hearts of the commoners, the Lord was God. Everything that the Lord said was the truth. At this moment, when William and his companions entered the East Sea metropolis, Bernard, who was in the castle on the sea, was holding an extravagant and luxurious banquet. The castle was a Gothic building. It gave people a feeling of ascension. The interior of the building was extremely spacious and bright. If the walls were beautiful and artistic enough, it would give people a strange feeling of worship. It would also give people a feeling of spiritual collision and devotion. In this banquet hall that was more than 500 square meters, there were only tens of people attending the banquet, but there were hundreds of beautiful servants serving them. They were extremely beautiful young girls dressed in revealing clothes. They were either pouring tea on the side or dancing unsightly dances in the banquet hall. Often, some rich and powerful people would suddenly grab a girl and bite her neck to suck her blood. However, the other human girls turned a blind eye and continued to do what they were supposed to do. Because people who were bitten wouldn't die, nor would they become vampires. They would just be weak due to lack of blood. They were the blood slaves of these vampires. The purpose of a blood thrall was to provide blood and service. Getting bitten was no big deal. If the struggle angered the vampires, it was possible that they would fall into a dead end. As blood thralls, not only could the girls cultivate their fighting aura or magic to improve the delicious quality of their blood, they could also gain their freedom when they grew older. Furthermore, these vampires would give them a large sum of money so that they could start their lives anew. A handsome middle-aged man sat on the main seat of the banquet table. He had a ruddy complexion and looked no different from an ordinary person. He did not have the eye-catching characteristics of a low-level vampire. He was Bernard, and he had a very polite look about him. It could even be said that, other than when the vampires were hungry, most of the blood breeds present had sufficient etiquette and smiles. A young girl walked to Bernard's side and whispered something into his ear. Bernard stood up with a cup of wine in his hand and said with a loud laugh, "Some delicious demon hunters have come to the city. I heard that there are as many as 6 high-level demon hunters. I wonder which courteous gentleman wants to be the bait and capture them. My lord, why don't you leave this matter to me?" No, no, no. A vampire who was not far from Bernard stood up and refused. At the same time, he said with a face full of reminiscence, "It's best if you leave this matter to me. After all, the strength of 6 high-ranking demon hunters is definitely not too weak. Ever since that incident, I haven't tasted the taste of a high-ranking professional for a long time. Please give me a chance, my lord." Umph. The first vampire who spoke glanced at him and saw that Bernard had no intention of refusing, so he could only sit down with a face full of resentment. One had to know. Even though the East Sea metropolis was the territory of the vampires, and they had legions under them, they could not simply appear in the city. This was because humans were naturally afraid of them. They could treat humans as food, servants, and slaves who worked hard for them. But if it was not necessary, they would not use their power to arrest the demon hunters for a groundless crime. Because the East Sea metropolis also had a temple of light. The temple knights and pastors knew their identities. But due to the problem of the Palace of Darkness, the Temple of Light would not directly expose their identities. After all, to the Temple of Light, A group of public vampires was far more powerful than a group of hidden vampires who killed and caused trouble everywhere. As long as the vampires did not provoke public anger, the Temple of Light could not be bothered with them for the time being. After all, the darkness invasion was far more troublesome than the vampires. After William entered the East Sea metropolis, he did not wander aimlessly. Instead, he followed Diablo's memory and gradually arrived at the inner part of the city. Then, he found an abandoned castle. It was obvious. This was Diablo's hometown. Diablo's clansmen were one of Bernard's trusted subordinates. But it was certain that Diablo's clansmen were not vampires. Alec was the intelligence chief of the City of Dawn. He had been sent to secretly gather information. After all, it was not easy to erase the traces of the massacre. He would more or less be able to find some clues. And this mission was to help Diablo find the enemy who had destroyed his clan. Since the mission difficulty was A+, it should be an enemy of the same level as William. At least, it was definitely not an old fellow like Bernard. But the five of them searched the abandoned castle for a long time, but they did not find any useful clues. This made William a little worried. He did not know if Alec could find any information about the mission. But one thing was certain. If they could not find out who Diablo's enemy was, then William could only target the vampires. In that case, William could only turn his attention to the vampires. He wanted these insiders to tell him who was the mastermind behind this massacre. But if William really did that, he would definitely anger Bernard, which would lead to a qualitative change in the mission. But what William did not expect was that, before he had the intention to attack the other vampires, the difficulty of this mission had already been indicated as S level. This is getting interesting. Did I use my identity as a demon hunter to attract your attention? Or did you want to kill us because we came directly to Diablo's hometown? William frowned as he walked out of the castle. A bat was hanging on the treetop and looking at him. William lifted his head and looked at the vampire. Bang! The ground beneath William's feet suddenly exploded, and he dashed towards the bat like a cannonball. This vampire did not expect William to play his cards so erratically. Usually, even if a demon hunter saw a bat, he would not suddenly attack. He would even go back and discuss countermeasures. He might even think that the bat was a scout sent by the vampire. This was different from the night novels. But in the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, the vampire did not have the time to soar into the sky. William stretched out his large hand to grab him. The vampire in the form of a bat could not continue transforming. So he quickly transformed into his human form. Just as he was about to counterattack, William's left hand emitted lightning and grabbed the vampire's neck like a pincer. He forcefully restrained the vampire and flung him to the ground. Boom! There was a loud explosion, and a huge pit appeared on the ground. Everyone who heard the sound rushed out of the ruined castle. They saw a vampire with fangs who had just gotten up, but he was trampled on by William, who was descending from the sky. In the next moment, William sneered and grabbed the vampire's arm. He smashed him to the ground. Palm, 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 palm. When he was smashed to the point that he no longer looked like a human, William stepped on his head, wishing he could stomp him into the ground. He asked in a cold voice, "Tell me, was this castle conquered by the vampire? Who are you?" This vampire was the one who had decided to be the bait during the banquet. He had wanted to call for reinforcements. This ruined castle was a good place to surround and kill the demon hunters. But William was too decisive. He did not give the vampire any chance. He was dumbfounded by William's attack. "I'm asking you a question, not asking me. Do you understand?" William narrowed his eyes and stomped on the vampire's head again. He almost crushed the vampire's skull. Both of them were advanced professionals. This vampire had the bloodline potential of a grandmaster, but his combat power was far inferior to William's. The vampire was not convinced. He struggled to stand up. He had never been humiliated like this before. "Let go of me. I'll send you out of the castle. Otherwise, you'll die." "Oh, do you mean I'll be afraid of Bernard or you vampires? I just want you to tell me who killed all the residents of this castle." William stomped on the vampire again. But at this moment, the vampire suddenly transformed into a small bat and was about to fly away. But there were so many bosses in front of him. How could he escape? Diablo could not stand it anymore. He gently clenched his fist, and several metal needles shot out from the ground. They pierced through the bat's body and stopped him in midair. The vampire transformed back into his human form. His entire body was pierced by the metal needles. Even his anus was pierced by a needle. Just as he was about to scream in pain, William slapped him hard in the face. That slap caused a large chunk of flesh to fall off his face. William did not care about the vampire's bloody appearance. He grabbed the vampire's hair and lifted his head. William looked into the vampire's eyes and said, "Tell me the truth, and I'll spare your life. Otherwise, I'll show you what cruelty is." Cruelty? What could be crueler than the blood race? The vampire wanted to retort, but William's next words made his heart turn cold. "Do you know what it means to have a vampire's BQ? I have a group of strong men under me. Believe it or not, they'll destroy you. Speak, I'll speak." The vampire was dumbfounded. Wasn't William targeting the elves? Now, he was targeting the blood race. "Could you be a little more humane? We are vampires. Give me some face." Chapter 253. The vampire could not look at the demon hunter in front of him. Even if William wanted to ruin him, he had to see what race he was. He was a vampire. Did he think that the two canine teeth in his mouth were fake? William saw that the vampire did not speak and slapped him again. Unfortunately, one of the canine teeth fell out. The vampire's face was swollen from the slap. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Do you want to know who killed everyone in this castle and what happened?" "Duh." As rampaging dragon sneered, he moved one of the needles. The vampire inhaled a breath of cold air. The pain in his butthole was indescribable. His eyeballs were about to pop out. He did not dare to speak anymore. He was fearful of William and his companions. The person in front of him was not fearful of them like the other demon hunters. Whether it was his bat form or this exaggerated immortal body, these guys were not afraid of him at all. The person in front of him, who looked like a boss, seemed to understand vampires very well. This made the vampire feel a deep sense of malice. He swallowed his saliva and said, Don't move. I'll tell you everything. This castle originally belonged to the Lex family. On a night 18 years ago, they were attacked by the Bruce family. It was an unguarded invasion. The Bruce family came to this castle in the name of making friends. The instant the signal was sounded, they worked together and instantly cut off the castle's defensive magic array. As the enemies outside rushed in, everyone in this castle was killed. Killed everyone? Diablo laughed coldly. The vampire, who couldn't move, looked at Diablo and mumbled thoughtfully. Not all of them were killed. The son of the owner of this fortress disappeared, but he was just a child of 12 or 13 years old. No one cared too much about him. You're the heir of the Lex family. So that's how it is. The vampire couldn't believe it, but he couldn't help but say, "Since you've left, you shouldn't have come back." Not only did Lord Bernard tacitly approve of the Lex family, but other vampire families also intervened. It's not as simple as you think. William curiously glanced at the minor character. Was he being kind, or was he trying to provoke them? The mission level had reached S level. How could he give up on it so easily? So he asked, "What's your name? What's your relationship with the Bruce family?" "You can call me Durand. As for my relationship with the Bruce family, it's not good." Durand was about to explain why he had a bad relationship with the Bruce family. William interrupted him and asked, "What caused the Bruce family to want to kill you?" "Blood essence of the blood dragon." Durand didn't dare to hesitate. He said whatever was on his mind. The people in front of him were not to be trifled with. The six of them dared to venture deep into East Sea Metropolis and acted so fearlessly. They definitely had a lot of trump cards up their sleeves. There was no need to provoke them further. Perhaps you don't know what the blood essence of a blood dragon is, but it's a priceless treasure to the Blood Clan. It can even be called a divine weapon. Lord Bernard has been coveting the blood essence of the blood dragon. There are 4 maps of the blood dragon. He already has one of them, but someone secretly told him that the Lex family has one of the maps. Durand took a deep breath and continued. But the Lex family are humans, not vampires. They are loyal to Bernard. So even if they found the blood essence of the blood dragon, it would not be of much use. It would be better to offer it to Lord Bernard, so there was no need for them to deceive Lord Bernard. Lord Bernard had never doubted the loyalty of the Lex family, so this matter was left unsettled. But after a period of time, there was a secret war between the different powers of the Blood Clan. The leader of the Lex family was severely injured and was about to die. He wanted to become a vampire and wanted Bernard to give him the embrace. Durand saw the puzzled looks on their faces. He said in a deep voice, "That's right. It's not a big deal for a dying person to want to become a vampire." But Lord Bernard was also severely injured. If he wanted to give him the embrace, he would have to use up a lot of power and blood essence. More importantly, the leader of the Lex family swore to the gods that no one in his family would become a vampire. But that day, the patriarch of the Lex family seemed to be possessed by a demon. He was extremely obsessed with the blood race. You have to know that the more powerful a human is, the harder it is for him to become a vampire. Take the leader of the Lex family, for example. Even if he was about to die, he would still be extremely powerful after becoming a vampire. It can be said that besides Lord Bernard, no one else can give him the embrace. But if Lord Bernard really gave him the embrace, the leader of the Lex family would become the strongest person in EC Metropolis. Wales suddenly waved his hand and asked with a confused expression, "Wait, I heard that after a vampire gives someone the embrace, they can completely control him." Durand was also confused. He said with a hint of disdain, "Where did you read the novel about the Blood Clan? Bring out the author, and I will beat him to death." The inheritance of the Blood Clan comes from the Blood Dragon. Other than the Blood Dragon, no one else can control us. Even if we were given the embrace, it would only expand the size of the Blood Clan. But with the blood essence of the Blood Dragon, it would be different. If a vampire finds the blood essence of the Blood Dragon and absorbs it, he would be able to control the life and death of other vampires. Oh, does this mean that Bernard started to suspect the leader of the Lex family at that time? That's right. Durand nodded and continued. In the end, his lordship didn't turn him into a vampire. The patriarch of the Lex family died unjustly and was succeeded by his son. After that, the Lex family was constantly suspected by his lordship. In the end, the Bruce family suggested to kill all of them and find another map. However, Lord Bernard chose to remain silent. "Tell me, did you find the map?" Diablo grabbed Durand's collar, his eyes spitting fire. "Cough, cough, let go, let go." Durand's trachea was pierced by a steel needle. He spat out a mouthful of fresh blood and licked his lips. "I don't know. I really don't know. But the Bruce family caused the last human subordinates of Lord Bernard to die. From then on, some human experts who knew of Lord Bernard's identity didn't dare to seek refuge with him, even if they knew that if they became Lord Bernard's subordinates, they would enjoy great power in the East Sea Metropolis. But the humans were afraid of us. They were afraid that Lord Bernard would kill them." William laughed and said, "You vampires sound like you're so nice. You're so suspicious of the blood essence of the Blood Dragon. Now, bring us to the Bruce family. We'll take our revenge." Buzz, 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 the sound of the air rippling could be heard. Durand suddenly laughed at himself. "There's no need for you to go. They're already here. I said, if you don't want to leave, then you don't have to leave. What a joke. Do you think I'm afraid?" William coldly laughed. He held the thunder blade in his left hand and the sword of Hegni in his right hand. He stomped on Durand's chest. He looked at the hundreds of bats flying towards him and laughed. "Vampires of the Bruce family, come and die. Bernard, if you're smart enough, you'd better dodge. Otherwise, I'll kill you too." William's voice was like a thunderclap that reverberated in all directions. However, then, an invisible barrier rose. His voice reverberated continuously, but didn't reach the ears of the commoners. Hundreds of bats arrived at the abandoned castle. When a leading bat transformed into a handsome middle-aged man, the other bats transformed into humans. Except for Bernard, who had the aura of a grandmaster. There were a few others who did the same. Bernard always had a smile on his face. He curiously looked at William and the other 4 vampires. They were all powerful, advanced professionals with great potential. Another person had disappeared from the East Sea Metropolis. But it was not important. Even if Bernard went to the Temple of Light to ask for help, the old man of the Temple of Light, might not want to offend Bernard. Bernard glanced at the dying Durand. Then he looked at William, who was shining with lightning. Who gave you the confidence? Who? Sorry, I've always been confident. William narrowed his eyes. Not bad. There were many grandmasters here, far more than what he had seen in his previous life. What's your name? Bernard didn't continue to look at William. Instead, he looked thoughtfully at another person who was holding a spear. Diablo took a deep look at him. Bernard hadn't attacked him directly, but he had sat back and watched. That was the enemy who had indirectly killed his entire family. However, Diablo still said in a low voice, Diablo Lex, you're the lad who escaped? Bernard walked towards Diablo. He even wanted to stretch out his hand to touch Diablo's hair. But Diablo's expression didn't change. He just stared at Bernard, and Bernard gave up on this idea. Diablo, you didn't do anything wrong. I'm very pleased that you've grown to this stage. If you really want to take revenge, you can tell me your identity. I'll give you a fair duel with the Bruce family. Bernard turned his head and slowly walked away. As he spoke, his tone became colder. He suddenly turned his head and said, But you can't bring an outsider to the East Sea metropolis to take revenge. Who gave you the courage? Diablo remained silent. All the metals within a 100-meter radius buzzed and trembled. Some of the tiny metal particles slowly gathered together. Burn Cinder's eyes turned red and bright like lava. The ground beneath Wales's feet trembled. The soil wrapped around his body to form a thick layer of armor. Violent Dragon's fists collided, emitting dazzling flames. His aura continued to rise. William smiled and kicked Durand away. He looked at Bernard and said, I gave him the courage. Are you unhappy? Who are you? Bernard was surprised when he saw the explosive aura of those people. The advanced professionals in front of him were very powerful. They were not weaker than Bernard when he was an advanced. In fact, they were even stronger. But talent didn't represent strength. The potential of these people made Bernard want to kill them. Lord of the City of Dawn, William Blackleaf. Do you want me to take revenge for my subordinates? Or do you want me to start a war? William suddenly lifted his hood and revealed his entire face, as well as his iconic pointy ears. When he said this, all the vampires' hearts started to race. The famous Lord of the City of Dawn in the legendary continent, the Blackleaf royal bloodline, the Moonlight Elves William Blackleaf. More importantly, William Blackleaf not only had an elite legion, but he also had an army of hundreds of thousands of undead. How did they know about this? It was because the Temple of Light had promoted the City of Dawn, and William also received a benefit. Legend status, Lord of Dawn. Restriction, the legend status is only effective in the legendary continent. Description, the Lord of Dawn, on March 30th, 2334 of the Third Era, led all the forces in the southeastern region and became the sole victor against the Darkness invasion. Description, the Lord of the City of Dawn performed extremely well in this battle. He had countless trump cards, and he had the help of the angels, the Temple of Light, the Blackleaf Elves, the Moonlight Elves, and the Seraphin. Not only did he control an army of hundreds of thousands of undead, but he also had a group of silver-backed apes from the mythological era. Their power was unpredictable, and they had great potential. Chapter 254. Many vampires were stunned on the spot. Even the Lord of the East Sea Metropolis, Bernard, who was a Grandmaster professional, was stunned. He gazed deeply at William. He did not think that William was lying. But in his heart, even if William was the Lord of the City of Dawn, what could he do? If he killed William now, who would know that he was the murderer? Even if they knew that he was the murderer, would the power behind him take revenge for a dead person? At this thought, Bernard suddenly attacked. That was right. He wanted to test William's background. If William really had a trump card, then he could let William take revenge on the Bruce family. But what if William did not have it? If he retreated for no reason, how would his subordinates look at him in the future? As a lord, Bernard had relied on his own fists. He had grown from weak to powerful. What had he not experienced? Would a mere threat make him give in? What would happen to his prestige as a lord? What a joke. You're just a kid. Do you really think that just because you've made a name for yourself in the continent, everyone will give in to you? A figure suddenly appeared in front of William. Bang! With William as the center, an invisible ripple spread outwards. Even Bernard, who had stepped into the realm of Grandmaster, could not help but feel dizzy in the face of such a soul attack. William's expression did not change. He activated his battle energy shield, power of the Saint Spirit, and Dawn Assault. William's attributes suddenly increased by 23%. He was like the thunder god descending to the world. He dragged a clear trench in the ground as he charged towards Bernard. But Bernard also came to his senses at this moment. He instantly transformed, and his physique increased sharply. In an instant, he became a 2-meter-tall beast. Fangs protruded from his mouth. His 2 shoulders were wide enough for a horse to run. He hammered at the ferocious lightning. Boom! A shock wave spread in all directions. William had activated the power of transformation and Dawn Assault, but he only made Bernard take a step back. This move that could dominate the battlefield did not work here. The stone tiles under their feet shattered like a spider web. Their arms were entangled, and green veins could be seen. It was as if they were bulls exerting their strength. "Is that all you've got?" The well-built Bernard panted heavily. He looked at William's neck lecherously, as if he wanted to take a bite. William glanced at him. Bernard's strength was indeed abnormal. He had not grown wings, which meant that he was only at the beginner level and was far from reaching his strongest state. However, he still abruptly kicked forward. Bernard's expression changed, and he instantly retreated because the speed of this guy's groin-lifting kick was too fast. He almost fell for it himself. After they separated, William placed his right hand on the hilt of his sword. He raised his eyebrows and said slowly, "Do you want me to draw my sword?" William knew that he couldn't defeat him. What happened just now was just child's play. A Grandmaster close combat professional could be called a Jedi warrior. This meant that they wouldn't be bound by the ground. The sky was their battlefield. The flight spell was far from being as useless as the advanced spell. Not only was it very agile, but it was also very fast. Jedi warriors had all sorts of long-range Do-Chi techniques, many times more than high-level Do-Chi techniques. Even if they weren't long-range Do-Chi techniques, they still had a range bonus. As long as they were in the air, they could easily beat up high-level Do-Chi techniques. In addition, the quality of the battle energy would also change greatly. It was basically impossible for an advance to fight against a Grandmaster. Hence, it was almost impossible for William to defeat a Grandmaster, let alone a Grandmaster vampire who had an epic bloodline. But all of this was not important. William had a small, godly weapon, the Sword of Hegni. This Sword of Hegni did not have a level restriction. Similarly, the increased attack power of this sword far surpassed that of advanced and Grandmaster legendary weapons. More importantly, he could sacrifice his life to continuously increase his attack power. Even if William was facing a Grandmaster, he could still kill him. When William held the black longsword in his hand, everyone present felt a curse aura that made them feel despair. The Lord of the City of Dawn was also enveloped by the curse and engulfed. When Bernard saw this scene, he couldn't help but narrow his eyes. He couldn't believe that William had such an evil weapon. As a vampire, he thought that he would not dare to touch such an evil and cursed weapon. But he did not expect that the Lord of the City of Dawn, who seemed to be righteous and bright, might be even darker and more evil than him. It's hard to say. After all, only the City of Dawn had defeated the darkness invasion in the legendary continent. Perhaps William is a pawn of the dark forces. The more Bernard thought about it, the more shocked he became. He seemed to have discovered a big secret. He saw William slowly unsheathe the black longsword. When it was halfway out of the scabbard, the black sword light was faintly discernible. As for the cursed aura, it enveloped the entire barrier. Gosh, is this the Lord of the City of Dawn or the Lord of the Dark City? Quick, take a look. The thunder shield on his body seems to be engulfed by the darkness. A vampire secretly transmitted a message to Bernard. They felt as if they had seen a major villain. William had an evil smile on his face as he slowly approached Bernard. He licked his lips and laughed mischievously. "Come and try. Let's see if you'll die when I unsheath the sword." "Afraid? How is that possible?" Even if Bernard was afraid of William's weapon, he wouldn't shout for help. A crimson longsword appeared in his hand. When William took another step forward, both of them unsheathed their swords at the same time. Black lightning and crimson sword light intertwined. Bang! Crack! A dazzling wave of battle energy swept across the entire battlefield. Many vampires who were close to William were sent flying by the shockwave. They vomited blood in midair. The moment William unsheathed his sword, he used one of his ultimate moves, the Light of Dawn. That was the first strike. William shouted softly. Bernard's expression did not change. The second strike had arrived. He wielded his crimson longsword again. Boom! The ground trembled, and the ground beneath their feet sank by a few meters. The entire barrier was flashing with electric arcs and crimson sword energy. This was William's second move, the endowment Fury of Thunder. It used fresh blood as a sacrifice to increase the lethality of creatures that were 10 levels higher than him. After exchanging a blow, both of them took a deep breath. Subsequently, just as William was about to unleash his third strike, which was the skilled destructive sword energy, Bernard frowned slightly, but the other vampires retreated quickly. They wished they could run out of the barrier. But at this moment, Bernard suddenly smiled. He waved his hand to stop William from attacking. He said, "We are both neutral lords. We could talk things out. There's no need to fight to the death. It's embarrassing." William looked at him as he silently sheathed his crimson longsword. He laughed. "It's best if we can settle this peacefully. After all, the City of Dawn isn't a small force that can be bullied. Lord Bernard should be able to tell, right?" Hee. Bernard silently sheathed his crimson longsword. But at that moment, crack, there was a crisp sound. No one noticed, but William's lips curled into a smile. Bernard had already placed his longsword back into his space ring. He glanced at the ill-intentioned William and cursed in his heart. "This longsword has been with me for so many years. You destroyed it in 2 moves? Is your weapon a godly weapon?" The Lord of the East Sea Metropolis looked fearfully at William's black longsword. He did not know the price to pay for using this cursed weapon, but it was definitely not a small price. Although the weapon in front of him looked tempting, he had no intention of using it, because his fear of William would only increase and not decrease. William seemed to want to use 3 extremely powerful sword moves to make the Lord of the East Sea Metropolis feel fearful. He wanted the Lord to think that he was not a pushover. At least, although the Lord of the East Sea Metropolis was an advanced warrior, he was not a mouse that a grandmaster could easily kill. In addition, the destructive power of the Sword of Hegni had the godly ability to deplete the durability of the weapon and destroy it. It was enough to make the Lord of the East Sea Metropolis feel fearful. The Sword of Hegni in his hand was not something that an ordinary person could wield. The vampires who were surrounded by the barrier, which of them did not have 10s or 100s of luck points? But what about himself? It was just 1 luck point. He was not afraid. He was not affected by the curse. But it was different for the others. When Lautner saw the Sword of Hegni, he wanted to play with it. But when he sensed the curse aura, he ran far away. He was afraid that he would be tainted by bad luck. Furthermore, Alec did not appear. It was enough to prevent Bernard from killing William. It didn't take a genius to figure out whether the City of Dawn had a Grandmaster's combat power. At least, many forces believed that there were super professionals in the City of Dawn who could protect William. Because William had too many identities, many small forces had to be wary of him. Before they were confident that they could kill William secretly, no forces below the kingdom level would dare to provoke the existence behind William. Hence, both of them sat down to negotiate. The final outcome was Diablo versus the leader of the Bruce family. Both of them were advanced. The former had just become an advanced, while the latter was close to becoming a grandmaster. There was only one condition for the duel. It was life or death. The death would be the death of the entire family. All the wealth would belong to the victor. This duel seemed to be extremely disadvantageous to the Bruce family. But no one objected. For Diablo, who had just become an advanced, the chances of him winning in a duel of life and death were very slim. Many vampires felt that they had made a huge profit. This was a duel to the death. But what about Diablo? He was nonchalantly wiping the long spear in his hand. He was unmoved. William had done what he had promised. Now, it would be best for him to take revenge on his own. As for the spearman, he could only advance. He could not retreat. Life and death were predetermined. Success or failure was determined by God. He had been alone since he was young. He had never been afraid of death. Chapter 255. Everyone was very decisive, so the duel between the two did not drag on for long. It was to be tonight. Robert Bruce, who had lived for hundreds of years, looked very handsome. He was like a young noble from a human nation, and he had a courteous smile on his face. But he was the leader of the Bruce vampire clan, and he was the leader of the Bruce vampire clan. It could be said that most of the vampires who had lived for a long time were scum with a human's face but a beast's heart. If one could judge a person by his appearance, then William was definitely the best person in the gods' world. As a matter of fact, as soon as Robert arrived and saw Diablo, he had almost recognized him. Both of them looked at each other in silence. Threatening words? Only a child would do such a thing. There was no need for the others to interrupt. Robert was the first to attack. He turned into a shadow and extended his sharp claws at Diablo's chest. Diablo's expression did not change. He took a step back, and an oval-shaped metal disc condensed in front of his chest. But it was penetrated like tofu, and the sharp claws reached his chest. But at this moment, the metal disc suddenly compressed and embedded itself on Robert's arm. Diablo saw the opportunity and immediately tried to chop off Robert's hand. However, as the blood in his body stirred, he spat out a mouthful of blood and staggered backward. He could only watch as Robert easily retracted his hand. The vampire sneered and said, "Your whole family plays with metal. It seems like you have no weaknesses in close range and long-range combat. Even if you have strong mental strength, your blood is your greatest weakness." Explode. Robert shouted angrily. Pom, pom, pom. It was as if firecrackers were exploding. Blood exploded all over Diablo's body. The blood vessels on the surface of his skin swelled and ruptured. In a short second, he was covered in blood. William and the others were not curious as to why Diablo did not use the magic scroll. It was because Diablo wanted to use his own strength to kill his enemy. It was said that the ancient spearman had luck, but if Diablo had not guarded the city gate of the Black Lava Dukedom, who could have killed him? The bloodline potential of this fellow, nicknamed Metal Torrent, was far greater than that of his ancestors. Subsequently, Diablo wiped the blood off his face nonchalantly. He revealed a pair of golden eyes and looked at Robert indifferently. Is that all? Still, F*CKU. Diablo's body emitted a golden light. His eyes were filled with endless hatred as he charged forward. Rumble. In fact, he had been using metal magic to gather the metal substances hidden underground. That was why he did not move and allowed Robert to attack. At this moment, the metal particles on the ground surged toward him like a rolling dragon. When Robert saw this, his expression changed. He activated his battle chi shield and retreated, but in the blink of an eye, his battle chi shield was instantly shattered by countless metal fragments. Countless metal particles crashed into his body, causing him to bleed profusely. It was as if he was going to be beaten into a cork. It was a pity, after this move, Robert's body rapidly recovered. Small metal particles were squeezed out of his body. He seemed to be heavily injured, but a vampire's recovery ability was simply unimaginable. Once again, he used the power of blood control and charged at Diablo to kill him, while Diablo was continuously injured. At the moment when he charged at Diablo, layers of metal shields covered Diablo's body. At the same time, wherever Robert passed, more than 10 metal spears shot out from the ground, almost turning Diablo into a cork again. Robert's palms were his weapons. The sharp claws on his hands were not his fingernails, but advanced epic gloves. When he waved his claws, bright red claw marks were left in the air. The so-called metal spears were all broken. Robert tore apart the metal shield that covered Diablo's body and clawed at Diablo's head. Crack! As Diablo could not dodge in time, several bloody wounds appeared on his face. But in the next second, Diablo looked at Robert, who had fallen into the metal ring. He smiled and suddenly clenched his fists. Swish! Within a radius of 100 meters, the metal particles, fragments, and even the metal weapons in the hands of some people converged at the center. It was a metal storm. It was as fast as lightning. It was as fast as the wind. The metal storm covered the entire sky like a metal tornado. Not long after, Diablo calmly released his palms, and countless spinning metal fragments scattered on the ground. He walked towards William without turning his head. He silently stood behind William. At this moment, Bernard and the other vampires inhaled a mouthful of cold air. Because of Robert, he was gone. Yes, the moment the metal storm appeared, Robert was instantly minced into pieces, even though he had transformed into a bat a second ago. However, amidst the dense and endless metal tide, his flesh and blood were almost stained by every single piece of metal and every single piece of metal. He was instantly reduced to a pile of bones. In an instant, even his bones had disappeared. Bernard gazed deeply at Diablo. He vaguely remembered this move. It was a move that Diablo's grandfather knew, but it was a killer move that Diablo had learned after he became a grandmaster. Back then, the Lex family had represented metals, and they had represented the metal frenzy. Wherever they passed, all their enemies would disappear from the world. Bernard's greatest opponent was not the humans, but the vampires of different forces. Hence, the metal storm of the Lex family was his right-hand man. He could easily kill off the vampires who were trying to escape. It was a pity, but now everything had changed. He had made a mistake back then, or rather, one wrong move led to many wrong moves. He did not give the embrace to the Lex family's patriarch and make him immortal. What was worse was that he had allowed Robert Bruce to kill everyone in the Lex family out of jealousy, all for the sake of the map that had never been found. But it was too late. When Bernard looked at William, his heart was filled with murderous intent. When he looked at Diablo, his heart was filled with remorse. But after taking a deep breath, he calmly waved his hand and said, "Linda, bring them to kill Bruce's family. All the loot from the castle belongs to Diablo." "Yes, Sir Overlord." A Grandmaster vampire nodded respectfully and gestured for William and the others to proceed. Bernard casually snapped his fingers. The outer boundary instantly dissipated. Meanwhile, Alec and hundreds of temple knights and pastors waited quietly outside the boundary. They did not attack, but it did not mean that they would continue waiting. Bernard glanced at the smelly and hard nail in his territory. He sneered and turned to leave. It was said that there were 4 top powers in the legendary continent: the Temple of Light, the Magic Sanctuary, the Palace of Darkness, and the Mercenary Guild. But in many cases, the Light Palace was far more powerful than the other 3 forces. Chapter 256. Bernard, the Lord of the East Sea Castle, not only had his home been attacked, but he had also forcefully flattened a castle full of vampires. That battle, which could be said to be a one-sided sweep, attracted a lot of spectators. Among them were the knights and priests of the Temple of Light, the Magic Sanctuary, the Palace of Darkness, and the Mercenary Guild were also secretly observing. Bernard was a vampire, so he could not be completely trusted. Hence, it was not as easy for him as William. Even though he was very powerful, many top forces had planted spies in his territory. Hence, this incident made him lose a lot of his reputation. But after the night in the castle ended, the inside story of a civil war in the East Sea metropolis spread. A war started by outsiders had forcefully turned it into a civil war between the East Sea metropolis subordinates. However, this didn't make the commoners too nervous, and it didn't diminish Lord Bernard's prestige. It had to be said that Bernard had played a good hand, but he was not the king. He could only fool the ignorant commoners. William did not have the time to deal with him. It was not the time to fight to the death. Even if there was a war, William wanted to reduce the scale of the battle. He did not want to lead a legion. At this moment, he had quietly left with Diablo and the others. Prompt: you have completed the mission Diablo's Family History. Prompt: you have completed the S-level mission. Prompt: Diablo swears loyalty to you and will never betray you. Prompt: Diablo's affinity for you has increased by 1,000 points. His loyalty has increased by 1,000 points. Prompt: East Sea Metropolis's affinity for you has decreased by 1,000 points. Prompt: Bernard's affinity for you has decreased by 20,000 points. This was the original reward of an A+ level mission. Now, it was the reward of an S level mission. This did not include the 200,000 gold coins, 500,000 silver coins, and hundreds of pieces of equipment of different qualities. The reward did not seem large, but to the players, they had struck it rich, because the difficulty and reward of the mission were determined by William's level. If a player obtained the loyalty of a legendary NPC, would he think that the reward of the mission was not high enough? A legendary NPC's follower was enough to turn an ordinary player into a top-notch expert. No matter how many players died, as long as their legendary NPC did not die, they would be like a 1,000-pound bull or a 3,000-pound boss. It was just that William's endowment made it much easier for him to gain the loyalty of NPCs. That was why the rewards were not that great. Otherwise, whether it was players or NPCs, how could they so easily subjugate some genius NPCs as their subordinates? That was impossible. William no longer said that his endowment was trash. This was not something that could be described as the blessing of the goddess of luck. It was more like the goddess of luck wanted to marry him. There were god-tier talents, right? Apart from the issue of talent. Moreover, the mission issued by the gods, Mainframe had always treated William as a player. Some of the A+ and S-rank missions weren't too difficult for him. However, players of the same rank would definitely not receive the same treatment in East Sea City. Not to mention whether the Temple of Light would respond to a player's request for help. Not to mention whether the player's verbal cannon was effective or not. William's legendary level in the continent was not something that ordinary people could achieve. Since the 6 of them had left the City of Dawn, they couldn't just wander around for a few days before returning home. They had to go to Emerald Grand Duchy. William had just received a piece of news from a mercenary guild. In the depths of a dense forest between Emerald Grand Duchy and Lanyu Grand Duchy, a blood fruit was about to ripen within the next 10 days. A blood fruit could bear up to 9 fruits. The blood fruit, with the highest quality, could even increase the potential of the legendary bloodline. This was something that William had to obtain. Not only could this fruit increase the potential of the bloodline, but it also had a sweet and sour taste. For example, when William reached level 100, all his attributes would increase by 100%. From then on, if there were no major changes, no matter how high his level was, the increase would always be 100%. Of course, William didn't know if becoming a sage or a god would change, but if he obtained the blood fruit, he could increase the upper limit of the percentage. Even if it was just a 1% increase, it would be a huge bonus in the later stages. It was worth the risk for William. He wasn't going to take the risk just for the sweet and sour taste. The blood fruit. Emerald Grand Duchy has such a good item. Violent Dragon and the others were pleasantly surprised. NPCs couldn't differentiate the level of the bloodline, but the blood fruit could increase a person's potential. Any aspiring professional would not let go of this opportunity. Burn Cinder curled his lips in disdain. It's just a blood fruit. I don't even want to eat it. Hee hee. Alec laughed. Hee hee. Wales laughed. Hee hee. Diablo laughed. William glanced at Burn Cinder. He knew that Burn Cinder was powerful, but he didn't know how strong he was. There were so many people here. Who could William defeat in a one-on-one fight? I'll forget about killing you once. Wales was an earth element shield warrior. If he stood there and let William hack at him, could William even move? Even William couldn't hack at him. Diablo was weaker in a one-on-one fight. But after he became an advanced, William couldn't understand what had happened. William didn't dare to underestimate Diablo's one-on-one fighting ability. Even if William and the others could withstand the metal storm, they would probably be disfigured. Perhaps only muscular giants like Wales and Violent Dragon would be able to survive in one piece. Oh, Alec couldn't defeat William, but he could run away. Violent Dragon had thick skin and flesh, so he couldn't be treated as an ordinary epic creature. It was simple. Each of the 6 people present was a super professional with unlimited potential, and each of them was a super professional who could dominate an area. Burn Cinder seemed to notice the gazes of the onlookers. He said again, "Of course I won't eat it, but whatever I snatch, I'll give to Lord William." As soon as he said that, everyone was instantly rendered speechless. What a bootlicker! Only William knew how to bark, right? Even if William didn't eat it, wouldn't they want to eat it? Since Lord William was so powerful, how could he eat it? It would be great if Lord William could lick the core of the fruit. Fortunately, everyone only imagined it, and no one said it out loud. The corners of William's mouth twitched. He wanted to tell Burn Cinder that being a bootlicker wouldn't make him stronger. Only by spending money could he become stronger. He clamped his legs tightly and whipped his horse. Drenched in the heavy rain, he led the way to Emerald Grand Duchy. He didn't know who had spread the news of the blood fruit, but it would definitely attract a group of powerful fellows. At that time, it might even lead to a tragic battle. He had to be prepared. If it was necessary, he could send a few legions to destroy them. Cough, cough, cough. It was just a thought. Actually, not many people would do that, because the NPCs in the world of gods, as long as they were powerful professionals, most of them had a certain background. Unless there was a power war, they would send out their armies to resolve it. In other cases, the impact of the battle would be minimized. Things were different now. William could no longer lead hundreds of elves as assassins without any scruples. The situation was very different. If William sent out a few legions, he could provoke most of the forces in the southern region. Moreover, the current situation could be seen as a treasure-snatching battle in the Xinxiao world. That was right. If there were no players in this world, it would be a very normal magical fantasy world. But regardless of whether it was a magical fantasy world or a fantasy world, it couldn't escape from the various stages of treasure snatching, exploration, and adventure. It was just that the players rarely participated in it, because most of the players couldn't compete with the NPCs, unless it was a place like Stormy Island, which was discovered by the players first, but there were no NPCs. Only then would the players be able to obtain a large number of treasures and sell them to the NPCs at a high price. Then it would lead to all sorts of killings and robberies. Oh, the players were usually the ones who were killed 3 days later. A group of 6 entered Emerald Grand Duchy, which was also controlled by vampires. Chapter 257. Although the Emerald Grand Duchy was ruled by the vampires, its internal security was relatively good. It was even better than other Grand Duchies. There were no gangsters in the Emerald Grand Duchy. Apart from most commoners, there were only a few slaves. Crimes were rare, and there were few evil warlocks. That was because the vagrants had been sucked to death by the vampires. This was the reason why the human empires and kingdoms did not bother with the higher-ups of the Emerald Grand Duchy, even though they knew that the higher-ups were vampires. After all, the human empires looked at the overall situation. The vampires occupied the higher-ups of the Grand Duchy, and they could kill them at any time. Even the ancestor blood dragon of the vampires was nothing in the eyes of the humans. What about the ordinary vampires? In the eyes of the vampires could kill them at any time. Moreover, it was also beneficial for the vampires to be nobles. The security in the Emerald Grand Duchy was much better, and the human empires allowed the vampires to slowly develop. After all, it did not matter who controlled the country. The countries controlled by the vampires generally did not like to have wars. For example, the death toll in the Emerald Grand Duchy was much lower than that of the smaller duchies. However, the vampires were well aware of their own situation. As a foreign race, they would not be recognized by the humans. Even if there was a war, it would be carried out secretly by their own race. Therefore, the vampires lived under the control of the powerful human empires, and they were very self-aware. Just like the professional that Fatty and the other live broadcasters encountered, he once said that as long as the human empires did not fall, even if the surrounding countries disappeared, it would not affect the overall situation. Because the human empires were really strong, so strong that the humans were extremely confident. They were like the great dragons of the First Era and the elves of the Second Era. William and his companions entered the territory of the Emerald Grand Duchy. They were still disguised as demon hunters, but they did not face the malicious attacks of the vampires. As they were nobles and officials, They would not take the initiative to attack unless they were discovered by the demon hunters. Furthermore, recently, everyone knew that the blood fruit had appeared in the Nightmare Forest. Many powerful professionals were rushing there, but the vampires couldn't be bothered with them, letting them fight among themselves. William and his companions wore hoods. If they did not reveal their faces, it was difficult to identify them. But the 6 of them attracted the attention of many players. That's right, they met many players in the Emerald Grand Duke's royal city. Among them were the players from the City of Dawn, the Black Lava Dukedom, and the Freedom Alliance. The players from the 3 factions formed their own teams and fought each other when they left the city. Many players of the City of Dawn posted posts on the forum, urging people to come to the Emerald Grand Duchy. Otherwise, they would be bullied to death by the players of the Freedom Alliance. It was a pity that William's 2 S-level missions had sent the players to 2 other places. Basically, apart from those who liked the scenery and some players who wanted to try their luck, no one would come to Emerald Grand Duchy. Holy SH*T, it's a boss team. It's another boss team. There are 4 legendary and 2 epic. Some of the players were shouting. After a while, many players gathered around William's group to watch. Of course, now, the players knew that boss quests were not so easy to receive. Therefore, they had no intention of coming up to ask for a quest. They were just curious and gossiping. Recently, they had seen quite a few groups of bosses, but most of them were masters or epics. It was hard to imagine that there would be 4 legendaries at once. Perhaps they are geniuses. The genius professionals of the empires came to this small place to train and defeat everyone, a player said thoughtfully. So I can't be sure. I've read many history books recently. There are battle energy colleges and magic colleges in the kingdoms and empires. The genius NPCs from those colleges would travel to different parts of the continent for adventures before they graduate. Perhaps these 6 fellows are a team of those geniuses. When William heard this, he could not help but laugh like a pig. Fortunately, he restrained himself. But he had also heard that the players of the Freedom Alliance had bullied his subordinates. D***MN, I can't tolerate it. William immediately sent a telepathic message to an intelligence officer stationed here. In less than 10 seconds, William found out the location of the Freedom Alliance's encampment. That was right. The players of the Freedom Alliance had developed well here. Although they did not have any powerful backing, they managed to obtain a guild encampment from the officials. The guild encampment was located in a small county not far from the capital. From the geographical location, the traffic was very smooth. After all, although the capital was big, every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. To the current players, even if they gathered funds, they could not buy a large guild encampment. William informed the other 5 players and asked them to find a place to wait for him. Then, he turned around and left. An hour later, in a small county on the west side of the capital, William easily found the guild encampment of the Freedom Alliance. At this moment, there were many players here. It seemed that they were organizing a large-scale guild mission. It was also the first time he saw Light of Freedom up close. He saw this player who had been slandering him on the forum all day. Light of Freedom stood on a high platform and shouted, "Recently, the forces of the City of Dawn have been expanding here. We will try our best to rope in those who have been bewitched by the City of Dawn to join our Freedom Alliance. But if we can't change their minds and make them abandon the darkness for the light, then we will have a big battle. We will kill all the players of the City of Dawn who came here 6 times a day. We will kill them until they become level 10 newbies. We have to let them understand that the Horn of Freedom has never disappeared. Our Freedom Alliance needs more ambitious people to join us. The guild leader is right. Let's destroy the City of Dawn and kill that idiot William." Yes. If not for the City of Dawn, Gerdonaces would not have died. That must be it. If Gerdonaces did not die, how could our Freedom Alliance perish so quickly? Light of Freedom glanced at the players below with an appreciative expression. He was secretly delighted because he didn't expect these people to be so easily fooled. But then again, it felt good to have power. Light of Freedom was clenching his fists and looking up at the sky. He was looking forward to his future. But then there was a loud explosion. The door of the guild encampment was blown to smithereens. Tens of thousands of players turned their heads and looked at the newcomer. Legendary. These two words appeared in their minds at the same time. Moreover, it was an extremely dangerous legendary boss. Light of Freedom was very curious about why a legendary would come here. He opened a recording and walked over. He was about to say something. In the next second, William extended his hand and grabbed Light of Freedom's head to stop him from talking nonsense. Meanwhile, William glanced at the players in front of him and the frightened Light of Freedom. He coldly said, "This is the territory of an aristocrat. How dare you promote freedom? Do you want to die?" In the next moment, crack, Light of Freedom's head was crushed. He did not take out any weapons. He did not even use the Thunder Shield. He relied on his speed to pass through the tens of thousands of players. The players were shocked to discover that even if the professional boss did not activate the shield, they could not cause any damage to him. This boss, he was too tanky. His skin was very thick. This was a massacre of intermediate players by high-tier legends. If Light of Freedom revived in the encampment, he would die in the next second. After 10 minutes, tens of thousands of players died and did not dare to revive in the encampment. William smashed the stone tablet of the encampment with a single punch. The guild encampment that they had painstakingly built was blown to smithereens. William returned to the city and found the players. He killed them again and again. After killing them 6 times, he forced them to go offline. He killed until no one revived. Even if the vampire nobles watched from the sidelines, they would not send their soldiers to their deaths. The vampire aristocrat was very curious. How did the undying in front of him provoke this boss? But the vampires seldom helped matters that had nothing to do with him. Just like that, the Freedom Alliance's guild was killed. Tens of thousands of players went to the forum to scold the officials. Why did a legendary boss attack the encampment? But William wanted to say, "Do you think this is the end?" No. I will send someone to follow you secretly. If you dare to come online and gather together, a black-robe boss will kill you. Again and again, until you quit the guild, or you quit the game. William wanted to say that it was not a big deal to provoke an NPC. But this NPC was a player in his previous life. He will definitely let you know why flowers are red. Is it fun to be a keyboard warrior? I will make you carry a keyboard forever and never dare to appear in the God's world again. Chapter 258. The Freedom Alliance's base had been destroyed by a legendary boss. No one knew who the boss was. This kind of news was very welcome on the Dawn Forum. It was great news. As the Freedom Alliance went to the Emerald Grand Duchy first and established themselves there, many players who went later were bullied by them. These guys, who had the home field advantage, would often gang up on new players, stalk them, steal their kills, steal their equipment, and harass the female players. Now that the Freedom Alliance's residents had been massacred, not only did no one pity them, but they even gloated over their misfortune. The Freedom Alliance's players nearly went mad with rage. However, what made them even angrier was, not only did the officials not say anything. Instead, they posted their deeds on the front page with a big red caption: "The consequences of angering a legendary NPC. TSK, TSK. Many of the Freedom Alliance's players were so infuriated that they either abandoned the game or secretly joined other guilds. However, there were only around 20,000 of them. They didn't even have the money to buy a name card, so no one took them in. Of course, the players of the Freedom Alliance had very strong beliefs. Many of them would rather die than submit. As an outstanding and adorable legendary boss, William was someone who wanted to do great things. Naturally, he would not be calculated with the players. He just asked Eric, who was stationed here, to kill a wave of people when he had nothing to do. It was enough to kill them until they couldn't take care of themselves. He had to fight his way out of the Emerald Grand Duchy. Aren't these people arrogant? Then let's go to the kingdom. When the City of Dawn became a kingdom, they would continue to kill. They would see if the Freedom Alliance or the City of Dawn was stronger. If they had the ability, they would join a powerful force. Then, they would see if the City of Dawn dared to touch them. William's group of 6 was on the road to the Nightmare Forest. Along the way, they met many professionals with the same goal. They were very cautious and didn't talk much. This nightmare forest completely separated Lanyu and Emerald Jade in the east and west. The forest area was very vast and continuous. In the north, it reached the border of the kingdom's forces, and in the south, it was close to the Sloran Duchy. Not only were there all kinds of magical beasts in this forest, but there were also many creatures of darkness. There were many dark sorcerers, vampires, bounty hunters, and even giant dragons who did not dare to show themselves. William also knew that there was a city that belonged to the dark forces in this forest. It was commonly known as the City of Darkness and nicknamed the City of Slaughter. The people in this city were not like Bernard's East Sea metropolis. At least, they still followed the rules of the human empire. However, the fellows of the Dark City did all sorts of evil, taking pleasure in chaos and destruction. They often sowed discord between other countries or trapped and killed some genius professionals. William suspected that they were the ones who had spread the news about the blood fruit. This was because he recalled something. One of the 4 maps of the blood essence of the blood dragon was in the Dark City, and it belonged to a powerful vampire. If that's the case, then it'll be interesting. William pondered silently. In his previous life, during the early stages of version 3.0, most of the darkness invasion had been resolved, and the players no longer paid attention to it. After players entered the Emerald Grand Duchy, they discovered that the Emerald Grand Duchy, Lanyu Grand Duchy, and EC City were on the verge of war. At that time, the players had no choice at all, nor did they have the time to investigate why the 3 of them were constantly fighting each other. He could only choose one of the 3 powers as the wager, just like in 1.0. Afterwards, he gradually lured out the Dark City in the Nightmare Forest. The players started to suspect that the Dark City was sowing discord in the dark. In any case, version 3.0 was a chaotic battle. Many factions were mixed together, and the players who were fighting for their lives were confused. They did not even know why they were fighting, until the players understood the truth. They were working for a group of vampires. TSK. It's so heart-wrenching. William thought of the many missions in version 3.0. He felt that Gods was a scam, but it had to be said. In the early stages of the game, Gods had set up many traps for the players to train their thinking ability and adaptability. Most of the players would be skeptical when faced with a situation. They would not comment on it. Everything would be left to the end. Only then would they determine who was the good and who was the bad. Even when some things had been decided, many players were still skeptical. It cannot be helped. They were afraid of being scammed. However, there were many stubborn people like the Freedom Alliance. Others could not deal with them, but William could do it on their behalf. Anyway, he could earn some experience points. Groups of professionals entered the eerie nightmare Forest one after another according to the intelligence they received. Along the way, William saw many small teams fighting. He did not know if they were looking for blood fruits or fighting. However, the auras of the 6 of them were not weak, and the many professionals they met on the way were all noobs, so they did not encounter any trouble. At this moment, it was impossible to ride a horse. They could only walk until their legs turned to jelly. William and his companions got off their horses and walked. When they entered the Nightmare Forest, they could vaguely feel a sinister wind. TSK. Look at this fellow. He looks so smart. Violent Dragon pointed at a large spider with hundreds of eyes on its back. He stretched out his finger and let the spider slowly climb onto his hand. Gosh, let's go. Wales felt a chill down his spine and hurriedly bade farewell. The other 4 nodded and distanced themselves from Violent Dragon. It was not that the spider was powerful, but it was really disgusting. They did not expect a rough man like Violent Dragon to have such a unique taste. It's not normal. It's not normal. Everyone, be careful. This nightmare forest is strange. Try to follow the traces of people. They did not fly in the sky because the flying skills of the advanced professionals were too weak. Besides the winged people, the advanced professionals were living targets for the flying magical beasts in the sky. Burn Cinder surveyed the surroundings. He discovered that the trees in the nightmare forest were very strange. They were all black, and the tree trunks looked like human faces. The withered branches were like the claws of monsters. Occasionally, their clothes would be caught by the claws, and it would definitely give people a scare. William nodded. There are very few green plants here, and there is a faint dark aura. This means that there are many devil's dens in this forest. There are definitely many dark creatures. The Tyrannosaurus crushed the hundred-eyed spider that was biting his finger. Green blood flowed out from the gaps between his fingers. After he tossed away the exploded spider, he grinned crookedly and said, "The poison is really strong, but spiders are cute, but they're not very obedient." The others were speechless. They wanted to follow the map and go deeper into the forest. However, he heard an extremely miserable scream. Everyone looked at William. William raised his eyebrows and snapped his fingers. He gestured for them to go and take a look. The six of them followed the sound and slowly walked over. They saw a fellow who had stepped into a trap. That person was wearing a black cloak. Both of his feet had stepped into the trap at the same time. Fresh blood and white bones were exposed. His screams gradually became softer, and he seemed to be on the verge of death. But William and the others just watched. They were motionless. They did not have the heart to save the weak. They had no choice. It was obviously a trap. It was a trap. They were not idiots. They were all experienced bosses. How could they be fooled by such a small trick? As His Royal Highness waited impatiently, he still hadn't seen any enemies appear. He frowned and took out his legendary lightning bow. He released an arrow. The arrow, which was surrounded by lightning, instantly arrived. It was a loud bang. The humanoid creature hidden under the black cloak died on the spot, and he was completely exposed. It was not a human. It was a zombie monster that had been captured and used as bait for a trap. Violent Dragon and the others frowned. If they were not professionals who often faced dark creatures, they would not know that when a female zombie monster was injured, it would scream like a human. Meanwhile, more than 20 professionals who were hiding in the dark slowly surrounded them from the left and right. These people were the same as William and the others. They wore black cloaks and hid their faces under their hoods. They did not look like good people. William raised his eyebrows. He stood up and smiled. "We're all here for the blood fruit. We haven't reached the destination yet. Is there a need to fight to the death? Are we going to let others take advantage of us?" Many black-cloaked people looked at each other and laughed mockingly. In front of the six of them, there was a man covered in black flames. He kicked the zombie monster and tilted his head. He sneered and said, "Take off your equipment and space rings. Get lost." William and the others did not move. He used his insight. Although he could not see their detailed information, he could see their bloodline potential. The person in front was a legendary. There were 6 epic and 8 grandmaster bloodlines. The rest were advanced bloodlines. There were a total of 25 people. It had to be said, this was definitely a huge sum of money. But William seemed to think of something. Moreover, the person in front of him was covered in black flames. Why was it so familiar? He suddenly said, "Adolf." Once he said these 3 words, the atmosphere became strange. As for the guy whose body was burning with black dochi flames, he was also a little stunned. I was recognized just like that? Was there a mistake? I'm in the Nightmare Forest, not in the Blackleaf Forest. Ever since he had been tricked twice in the Blackleaf Forest, he had come here. He had changed his name and surname. How could he be recognized? But Adolf was not the only one who was confused. William was the same. He had an epic bloodline. What treasure had he obtained to become a legendary? Could it be that the blood fruit was real? Or had he obtained it through other means? Was the news of the blood fruit released by them? Did they want to take the opportunity to kill him? After all, the occupation of bounty hunters was too shady. Everyone would rob them, regardless of whether they were in the light or in the dark. If there was a huge reward, they would kill their own people for the treasure. The 2 groups were in a standoff. They looked at each other in silence. But not long later. Then, a deafening roar sounded. Adolf and the others immediately ran over without looking back. They did not stay for a moment. William and the others looked at each other and followed. They wanted to see what kind of monster was inside. Could it be the guardian of the blood fruit? Chapter 259. It was true. Don't ask the NPCs how they knew about the Chosen Ones. Their understanding of the Chosen Ones was as good as the players' understanding of the Chosen Ones. Meichuan Naiku and the rest of the lifestyle players ran away. They were not normal players after all. Where did Prince William go? Rampaging Dragon looked around. Just when everyone was feeling puzzled, a hole had been dug out behind them at some point in time. He did not want to see the elven prince, who had tricked him many times. The prince coughed lightly and continued, "Try to make the situation a little more chaotic and lure most of the trolls out. Oh, Burn Cinder, come over too. Whales will hold off the Guru Realm troll while you hold off the other trolls." When William saw this scene, his heart ached. Although he had hundreds of trolls in his hands, they paled in comparison to this troll tribe. William was surprised. "Of course, you'll be the bait. What about us?" Alec and the others asked. Hundreds of trolls gathered in the cave, and there was a bloodline fruit growing in the cave. Although their subconscious told them that this group of undead were heaven's chosen ones, heaven had only said that once. The trolls in front of them were not weak. They were not weak at all, but there was no video transmission in this world. The number of professionals here was actually in the hundreds. These chosen ones were full of evil interests. They were brave and cowardly. They could not die. Their corpses could be resurrected on the spot or at another location. What were these suicidal fellows doing here? Some mages had surveillance abilities. Even when the players were having sex in the house, they could not hide from them. Moreover, these fellows had the title of the City of Dawn above their heads. But it was not the professionals who had provoked them. It was the hundreds of players. "I don't believe that anyone can scare me away. I'll hang myself in lava." Adolf laughed coldly in his heart. He had made up his mind not to retreat. Although the players' abilities were average, they were good at causing trouble. This group of unknown people seemed to have difficulty mating. It was as if a god had placed restrictions on them. The difficulty of mating was comparable to that of the elves. What was even more interesting was that after mating, they did not have children. When William saw this scene, he had a lot of question marks on his head. Your dragon-slaying saber is just a little brother. William tugged at Whale's trousers and said, "Come in with me. I'll try to dig into the cave. You can hold off the troll leader while I steal the blood fruit." The leader who guarded the blood fruit was a grandmaster troll with a legendary bloodline. But he had to say it. The six of them looked at the hundreds of players in front of them with a strange look in their eyes. Burn Cinder and the others were thinking that if they revealed their identities, their chances of obtaining the blood fruit would increase significantly. Burn Cinder squinted his eyes and said coldly, "Why don't we forget about it? The blood fruit is really delicious. It's better to stay alive." The others were speechless. Besides Violent Dragon, who was using boxing gloves, everyone else had weapons that were bigger, longer, and thicker than Burn Cinder's. When William and his companions rushed over, they saw a huge cave filled with trolls holding maces. What possessiveness! It's a sense of conquest. Violent Dragon, go and reveal your identity in front of the chosen ones and issue a mission in my name. Get them to mess up the situation. William did not know what Adolf was thinking. Otherwise, he would have recommended hot lava to Adolf. Understood. Everyone nodded. Adolf's 25 men did not stop the players. Adolf had just been called out. Now that he saw the chosen ones of the City of Dawn, he was a little afraid. But he had come to the Emerald Grand Duchy. How could he hide when he saw the mercenaries of the City of Dawn? How would others look at him? I wonder where Prince William went. These things can only increase our attributes, but they can increase the potential of the NPCs. This question took root in the minds of many NPCs. In less than half an hour. But even if they killed many trolls, even if the chosen ones did not appear today, they would appear another day. What? I can't handle a Grandmaster level troll. As soon as Wales finished speaking, he saw a group of people staring at him. His mouth twitched, and he could only sigh. I can handle it. He's just a Grandmaster level troll. I'm the best battle shield in the southeast region. Thus, after they dispersed, only a group of trolls were left howling in the same place. Where did they come from? Damn it. I even saw a lot of muscular tyrants carrying out evil mating rituals inside. My eyes were practically blinded. This race that is full of freedom is too perverted. It was true. Let's go. who knew there would be so many trolls in there. He did not want to see the Lord of the City of Dawn. Among them was Meichuan Naiku, who was a lifestyle player. He wielded his broadsword and dodged the attacks of the trolls. From time to time, he would counterattack, but he could not deal any damage to the trolls. Many NPCs who did not know the exact location of the trolls were lured over by the provocation of the players. They were a group of lifestyle players and adventurers who were not afraid of losing experience points. Meichuan Naiku saw more and more of his comrades dying. He immediately shouted, "Brothers, let's retreat. Don't let the NPCs reap the benefits. When they come, we'll reap the benefits." Because they already knew the Chosen Ones very well. The weakest were intermediate trolls, and there were more than 20 advanced trolls. In conclusion, they would go to places that were interesting and relaxing. Hundreds of intermediate professionals walked out in a hubbub, like farmers herding sheep, happily running towards the prairie. The others were speechless. You've reaped all the benefits, but you're the Lord. When he saw the muscular and steel-like trolls, he could not help but feel a sense of possessiveness. Many mages who believed in the truth would not completely believe in the so-called heavenly will. More importantly, these heaven's chosen ones were extremely vengeful. If he really killed them many times when they grew up, it was very likely that they would suffer endless revenge. More and more professionals gathered in the cave. But what was interesting was that the trolls could drop equipment after they died. Ahem, it's not a sense of conquest. William gradually locked his gaze on the legendary trolls. No one knew what he was thinking. There were hundreds of trolls. The legendary troll, who was guarding the cave entrance, shivered. He felt that there were unruly people who wanted to harm him. Otherwise, it would have been a mess. Therefore, if they wanted to kill the Chosen Ones, they had to conceal their faces. They could not let the Chosen Ones discover their identities. For a moment, none of the hidden NPCs dared to stop them. Bah, coward! Diablo spat in disdain. Oh, time passed. That was right. Hee. I'd like to know who's so powerful. My sword is thirsting for blood. Burn Cinder caressed his Dragon Slayer saber and laughed coldly. William narrowed his eyes and said, "Be careful. We don't know who released the news about the blood fruit. Be careful. Don't let the dark forces take it all." The largest portion in the middle belonged to the perspective he was looking at. As for the other 5 small images, they belonged to other people. F***CK. What kind of ability is this? T-Rex could not help but ask through the mental link. That's amazing. Fortunately, I sensed a familiar mental power, or else I would have fought back. Diablo blinked. The 5 extra images weren't too bad. He didn't feel dizzy. That was because everyone's mental strength was not weak. 5 extra images were not a big problem at all. If the players wanted to learn this ability, they would have to practice it well. Burn Cinder nodded thoughtfully. That's a good ability. I heard that T-Rex is getting married. On the day of their wedding, Lord, you can link his consciousness, T-Rex shouted. F***CK. This is called the chain of consciousness. It can share other people's vision. In a small-scale battle, it is considered a super powerful ability. Also, it can carry out mental communication. That means that other people will know what you are thinking. William explained. Awesome. Are you really a soul mage? Wales suddenly asked. Everyone knew that Prince William was a ranger, but they had just joined the City of Dawn, so they did not know what his other occupation was. After all, on many battlefields, William's Saint Soul magic was not very effective. Normal soul mages would not be able to use it. William casually admitted and did not explain further. His Saint Soul magic was full of tricks. How could it be similar to the skills of normal soul mages? It was similar to the sacrifice that absorbed the souls of others to replenish their blood. It was similar to the soul control that could not be learned now. There were also various soul skills. These were not the common skills of advanced soul mages. As time continued to pass, Li Tianlan's expression changed. The situation outside was getting more and more chaotic. Hundreds of professionals kept trying to lure out the trolls hiding in the cave. The blood fruit in the cave was about to ripen. However, Everyone's method of attracting monsters was nothing more than arrows or skills and spells that weren't too powerful. After all, until the very last second, no one would think that they couldn't get what they wanted, nor would they let others not get what they wanted. Come out, you little trolls. Troll leader, you've been cuckolded. If you don't believe me, go back to your lair. It's true. Your followers are lying on your wife. Tisk TSK. You probably haven't unlocked all the positions. Needless to say, when the hunters, who were familiar with the trolls, scolded the trolls, the troll leader in the cave was instantly enraged. He lifted his mace and was about to rush out. He wanted to smash the group of people who were spouting nonsense in a meat paste and feed them to his newborn son. But he glanced at the blood fruit that was about to ripen. He decided to bear with it. But how could he not know if he had been cuckolded? He did not even know if his son was his. Hence, the legendary troll named Crazy Groom immediately called out a dozen names and said, "Stop those damn brats. If you can't, I'll crush your heads with a single slap." The dozen or so unlucky trolls looked at each other. They knew that they could not be the only ones going out to kill themselves. Hence, they glanced at the gloating fellows and said that they did not have enough manpower. They wanted to bring some people out to block the entrance. Crazy Groom was dumbfounded. He knew that there were a total of 13 trolls who could have cuckolded him, but there were 33 of them at once. Among them were his biological brothers, nephews, sons, nephews, his subordinates, and so on. When the troll leader saw this, he was speechless except for the word F*** in his heart. However, his heart was filled with anger. He waved his hand angrily and asked the bastards to leave. Many hunters who were familiar with the operation of the trolls were stunned when they saw the 33 trolls. They cursed in their hearts, so many. Some of the professionals who did not know the truth were completely dumbfounded. I shot arrows and threw magic spells. I can't even withstand a few verbal taunts. But then again, many of the professionals felt sorry for the troll leader. However, some of the professionals who had wives at home felt a little guilty. After all, they were fighting for their lives outside and often did not return home for months. What was their wives doing now? Damn it. Many of the professionals felt like their heads were going to explode. Hence, they comforted themselves. If I want to live a good life, I have to be cuckolded. Chapter 261. Time was running out. The blood fruit was about to ripen. Hundreds of impatient professionals joined hands to attack the trolls with thick skin and maces. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. One of the elite trolls with epic bloodline seemed to be suffering from dwarfism. He was less than 2 meters tall and looked very short. The weapons in his hands were not thick and long maces. Instead, they were 2 epic swords. He stared at one of the elite professionals and slashed at him. After 3 slashes, the combat energy shield was broken. After another 3 slashes, the elite's equipment was broken. Afterwards, he ignored the attacks from the 2 people on his left and right, enduring the damage he received and slashed out with the remaining 5 slashes. Just like that, he instantly killed a high-level warrior. What the F***CK? Why is this dwarf so fierce? Many professionals were shocked. After all, in their eyes, trolls were supposed to be stupid and fierce, but they were a little slow. Now, there was a mutant, but you don't say. There were many mutants among the trolls. Other than the hunters who specialized in dealing with them, not many professionals knew about the trolls. However, even if the trolls could fight against many of them, they were still not strong enough to deal with so many professionals. If not for the fact that there were many professionals who planned to ambush the trolls, the 33 trolls in front of them would have been killed. At the same time, some of the more observant professionals noticed that there was an air vent at the top of the cave that led directly into the cave. One of the professionals from the mercenary group could not wait any longer. He jumped down from the air vent and started fighting with the trolls in the cave. Meichuan Naiku and a few hundred other players rushed over and retreated back to where they came from. The situation was more chaotic than they had imagined. While the professionals were fighting the trolls, they secretly attacked their teammates who had just formed an alliance. This angered many people, and a chaotic battle broke out. There are so many elite professionals. We can't do anything. Sneak attack? Forget it, forget it. Isn't this just asking for trouble? Yumekawa frowned and waved his hand. We can't just give up without getting anything. We can loot the equipment. So many people have died. Whether it's the trolls or the professionals, they have dropped a lot of equipment and materials. Let's gather together and loot the corpses instead of fighting. Hence, this group of bold and fearless players rushed out in a group. Many NPCs were stunned when they saw the Chosen Ones appear again. However, the players did not take the initiative to attack any forces. A group of shield bearers stood at the edge and formed a tortoise formation. They were like a group of hamsters on the battlefield. Hundreds of people instantly surrounded some corpses, and a few seconds later, a naked corpse appeared in front of everyone. They looted corpses and looted other people's trophies over and over again. It made other people gnash their teeth in anger, but they were powerless against them. After all, the Heaven's Chosen Ones were a group of undead clan. Whoever touched them would dare to risk their lives against them, and they would not be able to do so. Moreover, not everyone was a legendary boss. Many high-level players with normal bloodlines were no match for hundreds of intermediate players. When they surrounded the troll's corpse, it was even more outrageous. In less than 2 to 3 minutes, all that was left of the troll was a pile of rotten meat. His skin, bones, and tendons were all looted. All that was left was a pile of smelly intestines that even dogs would not eat. We're rich. We're rich. This kind of chaotic battle is a good opportunity to get rich. That's right. In just a short while, we've looted more than 10 pieces of advanced equipment and more than 10 pieces of intermediate equipment. We didn't even suffer any losses. We've definitely made a killing. However, as time passed, this group of players became more and more outrageous. When they saw someone about to die, they walked over and waited for him to be killed. Then, they looted the corpse. However, this behavior angered some of the stronger bosses. They immediately used their ultimate skills to break up the formation of the players and instantly killed a large number of them. However, after Meichuan shouted, "Run!" all the players once again scattered and ran away. However, when the bosses went to join the battle again, they gathered together again and looted the corpse. It was obvious. The players had a deep understanding of their ancestors' battle tactics. If the enemy chased them, they would run. If the enemy retreated, they would harass them. Anyway, the equipment on the battlefield was extremely precious. Even if they died a few times, they were willing to do so. The corners of William's mouth twitched when he saw this scene from the perspective of others. Fortunately, everyone was after the blood fruit. If not, the players would have been beaten up long ago. He wanted to tell the players not to upload this to the forum. Otherwise, many players would have vomited blood. However, it was too late. He did not see that there was a live streamer among the hundreds of players. The forum was filled with jealousy and jealousy. Some people even wanted to try it on other battlefields. The chaotic battle continued. There were already quite a few professions rushing in from the huge hole. However, as the first troll leader to discover the blood fruit, his strength was not to be underestimated. This Grandmaster Troll charged forward with his 2.5-meter-long mace and hit the troll with it. Not only did the shields of the high-level shield bearers in front of them shatter, but they were also smashed into the wall like cannonballs. They spat out blood and looked like they were going to die. Gosh, where are the shield bearers? Why are they embedded into the wall? The mercenaries thought that they would be the victors after entering the hole, but they realized that the troll leader was too powerful. Crazy Groom also showed his craziness. He was more than 6 meters tall and weighed thousands of kilograms. He waved his mace and attacked with his battle energy. After he rushed into the crowd, he smashed the troll leaders. He did not have any powerful moves. He had unimaginable brute force. The mercenary team did not have any powerful shield bearers to defend them. Many warriors and rangers could not withstand a single attack from the Grandmaster Troll. Every time Groom swung his mace, there would be a piercing sound. He would smash the enemies into pieces or send them flying. The leader of the mercenary team was an epic warrior. He wanted to use his swords to block the attacks. But under the indescribable force, the epic bloodline advanced warrior turned from a 2-meter-tall man to a 20-centimeter pile of flesh. His flesh and equipment fused together and could not be separated. It was an instant kill. Whale saw this from another angle. He could not help but grip his shield and longsword tightly. He cursed in his heart. This was a trap. How could he withstand it? In a short 5 minutes, dozens of professionals who entered the cave from above died on the spot. Some of the shield bearers who were embedded in the wall died even more tragically. The troll leader dug them out from the wall and tore off one of their thighs. Then he started munching on it. Burned cinder felt a little weak. There were still many trolls in the cave. William asked Wales to block the troll leader, but he still had to block the other trolls. He felt that he was lacking something in this battle. But the blood fruit was about to ripen. The group battle became more intense. Some legendary bosses finally appeared. Chapter 262. The legendary boss, who was hiding in the dark, was like a tiger charging into a pack of wolves. He broke through the chaotic crowd and rushed towards the cave entrance. The few trolls at the cave entrance did not last for more than 3 seconds under the attacks of several legendary NPCs. They died on the spot. It was obvious. Some legendary NPCs had joined forces. However, William's eyes were very sharp. Adolf, the husky, was actually mixed in with the wolf pack. He hurriedly said, "Alec, hide. Everyone else, go into the cave and bury yourselves at the entrance. I think there's a conspiracy." Violent Dragon and his companions entered the tunnel, with the sound of a horn blowing. The tremors on the ground intensified. Countless ear-piercing roars came from all directions. Many professionals who were at the periphery shouted in fear. "Dark creatures, there are so many dark creatures. We've been tricked." Some mercenaries and hunters realized that something was amiss. They did not care about the blood fruits. They wanted to escape before the dark creatures surrounded them. Before they could escape, a group of dark knights appeared at the periphery. They were riding skeletal horses that were burning with black flames. Damn, it's the hellish skeletal horses. It's going to be difficult to escape. Hellish skeletal horses? This was a group of monsters that did not need to obey gravity. They could even step on the ceiling as though it was flat ground. Wherever the horses' hooves passed, there would be black flames that were extremely corrosive. The Dark Knights, who were riding the hellish skeletal horses, were the true Dark Knights. Besides the heavens, they were the trump card of the Dark Forces. Many professionals who wanted to escape were blocked by the Dark Knights who were running on the trees. It was an awkward scene. They rode on the trees. It was like a pig climbing a tree. Their actions were too flashy. Even some high-grade professionals who flew high up in the sky encountered extremely troublesome flying monsters. It was obvious. This group of dark creatures that had suddenly appeared wanted to surround and annihilate all of them. Therefore, more professionals chose to retreat and warn the group of suicidal B** stars to stop fighting. The most important thing now was to deal with the dark creatures. But many of them were in a frenzy. How could they care about the unknown number of dark creatures? In particular, those legendary NPCs were even more selfish. They belonged to different factions and were all genius professionals of their factions. Now, their hearts were as clear as a mirror. They thought to themselves, "You bunch of weaklings can't escape, but can I?" As long as he seized the opportunity to snatch the bloodline fruit, it wouldn't be a problem for him to carve out a path for himself. After all, he was a legend. Many legendary NPCs had the strength and experience to fight beyond their level. This experience gave them unparalleled confidence. Otherwise, how could they ignore the Grandmaster-level trolls and rush in? But what everyone didn't expect was Adolf, who was also competing for the bloodline fruit, suddenly changed his mind. He suddenly waved a sword light that was burning with black flames and immediately killed a so-called genius. With a wave of his hand, more than 20 bounty hunters rushed out and chased after the legendary NPCs, beating them up. The trolls in the cave seemed to be the underlings of the dark creatures. With Crazy Groom's roar, most of the trolls rushed out and attacked the human professionals. "Damn it! Are you bunch of bounty hunters tired of living? How dare you become the dogs of the dark creatures? Don't let us escape. Otherwise, you won't have a place to hide in the entire continent." The genius warrior, whose chrysanthemum was severely injured, said resentfully. His chrysanthemum, which had never been touched by anyone before, didn't feel tight anymore. He felt like he was going to die at any moment, the players naturally knew that they had been tricked. Logically speaking, the dark creatures were tricking the NPCs, and it had nothing to do with the players. However, they came to join the fun because they knew about the bloodline fruit. They might all die here today. Gosh, the battle is too intense. We can't escape it all. Are we going to revive at the revival point after we die? That would be a great loss. Hold on, hold on. Let the NPCs hold them off. Let's see if we can find His Highness. If we can find him, follow him closely. If not, we're doomed. The players knew that His Highness must have abandoned them in this situation. They had no choice. They could revive. They could only hope that they would receive more rewards after reviving in the city. At least, they would be able to compensate for the equipment that they had lost. William was still observing through Alec's perspective. He could not help but inhale a mouthful of cold air. The Dark City was going all out. They were going to annihilate this group of genius professionals. They were going to start a war. He even recognized a legendary NPC. The legendary NPC whose chrysanthemum was pierced by Adolf was the son of a marquis from the Red Fire Kingdom. He was extremely powerful. Logically speaking, he did not die in William's previous life. But now, it was highly likely that he would die here. This meant that the butterfly effect had begun. Adolf, who had been scared away by William, was the windstorm caused by the butterfly effect. William did not know what the windstorm would be like. The bloodline fruit is about to ripen in 2 to 3 minutes. However, the troll leader above us hasn't left yet. If I dig now, I'll definitely attract his attention. Whales, get ready. William quickly started to dig upwards. Even though the footsteps of thousands of dark creatures were very loud, the ground beneath the troll leader's feet was continuously collapsing. He cautiously took a few steps back and frowned. He could not help but mutter, "What's that? Are they the Dark World's earth hogs? That's so disgusting. F***CK, you're digging." William could not hold it in any longer. He transformed into a blue shadow and broke out of the ground. He aimed his sword at the troll leader's head. Swish! A long and narrow thunder, sword energy flew towards the troll leader's head. Bang! The cautious troll leader raised his mace to block the attack. The scattered lightning did not cause any damage to the troll leader. Wales raised a shield and sword and charged forward. A huge force smashed into Crazy Groom's stomach, causing him to take 3 to 5 steps back. A small wound appeared on his stomach. "Shorties, you're courting death." Groom discovered the wound on his stomach. Even though there was not much blood flowing out, he was furious. He kept chanting incantations that others could not understand. In just a few seconds, the surface of the troll leader's body had turned as black as ink. He hit his chest with his mace, but not only did he not suffer any damage, there was a clear sound of metal striking metal. Burn Cinder and Diablo stopped the other trolls. Whales and Violent Dragon looked at each other. If the troll in front of them could call himself a meat shield, what would they be? A meatball? It was a pity that William could not be bothered with other things. He gazed at the blood fruits that were about to ripen. The troll leader roared and beat up Whales and Violent Dragon. He swished the blood fruits 9 times. He plucked all the blood fruits. Then he used his left hand of the thunder god to dig out the entire plant. At this moment, he glanced at the bruised and swollen faces of the trolls. "Let's go. Let's go. Don't dawdle." After William finished speaking, he leaped into the tunnel without looking back. The troll leader could not take it anymore. The blood fruits were used as bait by the lord of the Dark Castle. Now that the entire plant had been snatched away, even if he could return alive, he would be severely punished. Therefore, he broke through the defensive formation of Whales and Violent Dragon and leaped into the tunnel. But at this moment, Whales and his companions, who seemed to be in a bloody battle, suddenly used all sorts of powerful attacks. They forcefully destroyed the entire cave. Meanwhile, before the cave collapsed, they dashed into the tunnel. As a result, Crazy Groom raised his head and looked at the tunnel entrance that had been blocked. Then, he looked at the many burly men who were surrounding him and gulped. He could not help but swing his mace to stop the burly men from advancing. He roared crazily, but the burly men did not care. They continued to approach him with smiles on their faces. Even if he screamed until his throat was sore, no one would come to save him. What could a Grandmaster Troll do? For legendary, and one epic troll would beat him up. Chapter 263. Mad Groom couldn't unleash much of his strength in this terrain that was clearly a trap for him. Under the siege of the 5 burly men, he quickly lay on the ground, barely breathing, allowing the enemies to ravage his body. He teared up as he waited for his enemies to execute him. But the leader in front of him was distracted. D***M, he's too much. Groom cursed in his heart, but he was happy to be able to live for a while longer. William ignored him. He had discovered something interesting from Alec's perspective. The dark creatures had purposely released some professionals from the Emerald Grand Duchy. Even the players had escaped with them. But the professionals from Lan Yu Grand Duchy and other forces had been obstructed by the dark creatures. They were tortured to death. That's right. It's a conspiracy of the Dark City. William recalled the information about the Crimson Blood. The Overlord of Darkness City was also a vampire named Osmond Lothar. He was an intermediate professional from Emerald Grand Duchy. He was not weak, but he was not strong either. On his wedding night, a vampire descended from the sky and wanted to take away his beautiful wife's virginity. When Osmond Lothar saw the vampire, his face was filled with disbelief because the vampire in front of him was the kindest aristocrat in their city. He was indignant and decided to resist. It was a pity that he was defeated. And because of his resistance, that kind noble lord not only sucked his wife dry in front of him, but also turned her into a dried corpse. As for Osmond Lothar, he lived on like a zombie. The next day, someone found him tied up. When Osmond regained his freedom, he immediately ran to the streets and cursed the noble. He told everyone that the noble was a vampire and that he wanted everyone to raise their weapons and resist, but no one would believe the nonsense of a crazy person. The commoners looked at him with pity. The soldiers beat him up and threw him back to his home. But Osmond Lothar did not give up. In the end, the soldiers could only beat him until he was half dead. They threw him out of the city and left him to fend for himself. After that, nobody knew how Osmond became the vampire that he hated the most. On the other hand, he was obsessed with killing vampires and humans who didn't believe in him. And because he devoured the blood essence of the vampires, he continued to grow stronger. His power continued to expand. However, it was absolutely forbidden for the blood race to devour each other. Not only would this attract the blood race's attention, but it would also cause their numbers to decrease. The blood tribe of the Emerald Grand Duchy had tried to kill him many times. However, not only did he escape every time, but he also became stronger, until Osmond Lothar built the Dark City in the depths of the Nightmare Forest. Because of the problem of his own power, he temporarily stopped hunting down the vampires. Even said, it had been a long, long time since he had taken any action. Even though the 3 major powers knew that there was a Dark City in Nightmare Forest, they didn't know who the real City Lord was. However, Osmond Lothar was the one who started the main quest of Crimson Blood. The blood essence of the Blood Dragon was also intentionally spread by him. He wanted to kill as many vampires as possible in this chaotic battle. He wanted to become the king of vampires. He wanted to enslave all the blood race and kill them one by one. In this battle, he had purposely released some talented professionals from the Emerald Grand Duchy. It was an overt plot. The other powers had no choice but to believe that the Emerald Grand Duchy had joined forces with the Dark Forces or the Dark Forest. They wanted to destroy the talented professionals from their own powers. Of course, this was only the beginning of the chaos. As more and more conspiracies appeared, the situation became more and more complicated. The 3 major blood race powers would start a chaotic battle. It was at this moment that the Dark City truly appeared. William scratched his head. He didn't think too much about it. It was just a small matter. He just wanted to take advantage of Osmond Lothar while he was stirring up trouble. However, he didn't underestimate Osmond Lothar. Osmond Lothar was the one who obtained all the maps. Not only did he destroy the Emerald Grand Duchy, Lan Yu Grand Duchy, and the East Sea Metropolis, but he also became the king of vampires. However, when too much power gathered on him, when he could easily kill vampires in an instant, he gradually forgot his original intention and became a super demon king. Or rather, Osmond Lothar, who had been blinded by hatred, had now become a demon. Anyway, there aren't any good people in version 3.0, except for me. William licked his lips and removed the soul control on Bloody Crusher. Then, he cast the soul control on Crazy Groom. Groom was extremely satisfied with the soul control. When his soul was captured, Groom felt as though his body had been emptied. When his soul returned to his body, he felt extremely satisfied. But it was painful. Groom's screams rose and fell. William's soul control did not stop. He did not stop at all. As for Burn, Cinder, and Arrest, they were also dumbfounded and trembling. It had to be said, they had finally witnessed what a soul mage was like. It was so evil. As for William removing the soul control on Bloody Crusher, it wasn't a big deal. Anyway, Bloody Crusher was temporarily placed on Stormy Island, and they couldn't escape. Furthermore, Bloody Crusher had traumatized William. Even if William's soul control was temporarily removed, he wouldn't have the intention to rebel. By the time Bloody Crusher had the intention to rebel, William would have brought Crazy Groom back. 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, 80 times. Wales counted as he looked at the troll, who was rolling his eyes and begging for mercy. He felt a sense of pity for him. However, the troll's recovery speed was very fast. Burn Cinder held his long and thin Dragon Slayer sword and stabbed the troll from time to time. Time passed. Half a day passed. The dark creatures had killed the professionals above them, but William still couldn't control the troll. But through Alec's hidden vision, he saw that someone had come to investigate the collapsed cave. William had no choice but to change his strategy. He dug a hole and retreated to the periphery. At the same time, he cast soul control on the troll that was crawling forward. Wales was holding the troll's neck with a rope, while someone was attacking from behind with a weapon. It was a conclusion. Inhumane. Chapter 264. William and his companions were lucky enough to escape from the encirclement through the underground tunnel. However, they did not dare to appear on the surface, as many dark creatures were still searching for them. Mad Groom had finally turned to the light after 9 years of compulsory education by William. He had become a general of the City of Dawn. Although Groom was a Grandmaster legendary troll, his soul was constantly in and out of his body. After experiencing 810 hardships, he finally obtained the true scripture and returned to the light. Through Alec's point of view, William discovered something interesting. Alec had saved the professional whose butthole had been destroyed. He was the son of the Marquis of the Red Fire Kingdom, Brian Redflame. The Red Fire Kingdom was located in the north of the Nightmare Forest. Brian's family had the royal bloodline and was the most trusted family of the Red Fire King. They were extremely powerful, and it was not a problem to treat Brian as a prince. Brian followed Alec into the tunnel. He stared blankly at the troll, who was lying in the tunnel in an extremely humiliating position. The troll's eyes were glazed over, and saliva was dripping from the corner of his mouth. He could not imagine what kind of torture he was going through. Brian looked at the 5 black-robed men in front of him and gulped. He silently leaned his bleeding buttocks against the wall. The troll's buttocks were loose now, so they should not be interested, but he started to ponder. When the cave collapsed, the troll leader had not come out yet. There seemed to be a huge battle inside. Now that the troll leader was here, did it mean that the blood fruits had been taken by them? William looked at Brian's fearful expression and smiled as he approached him. Don't be afraid. We're good people. Ahem. I believe that all of you are good people. You've saved my life, and I'll remember it. As for the blood fruits, I don't know anything. Moreover, the most important thing now is not the blood fruits. The Emerald Grand Duchy has colluded with the dark forces to secretly murder the genius professionals of the nearby nations. Brian did not ask for their identities. Instead, he changed the topic and implicated the Emerald Grand Duchy. After all, his identity was useless at this moment. He knew what was going on. Oh, the professionals of the Emerald Grand Duchy have all run away. Yes, someone deliberately let them live. But the appearance of so many high-level dark creatures is definitely not something that a single demon den can gather. Where are you from? What's your name? Brian hesitated for a moment before saying in a deep voice, Red Fire Kingdom, son of Marquis Redflame. Brian Red Flame. Originally, he wanted to see if the 6 people in front of him had any shocked expressions. In the end, other than William, who nodded, the other 5 were dumbfounded. That was because the other 5 didn't know how strong a marquis of the kingdom was. But the most unexpected thing was William took off his hood and revealed his face. He introduced himself. Lord of the City of Dawn, William Blackleaf. City of Dawn? Could it be the City of Dawn, the only city in the legendary continent that had defeated the Darkness invasion? Brian asked in surprise. That's right. William smiled and nodded. Mukuo, I like your shocked expression. It's an honor to meet you. I didn't expect Lord William to be so young and capable. Even in such a dangerous situation, you could still take a stroll in the park and steal. Brian glanced at the troll who was being led away and touched his injured buttocks. He smiled and said, I heard that the City of Dawn has accepted many employment missions recently. I wonder if you can send me back to the Red Fire Kingdom for 4,000 magical stones? Of course, that's not a problem. The City of Dawn represents light and justice. It's not a problem to escort you back. But 4,000 magical stones doesn't suit your status. 8,000? Deal. I'm just saying that 4,000 magical stones doesn't suit your status. I'm not asking for a higher price. William shrugged. He revealed his identity because he knew Brian very well. Also, he wanted to get in touch with the Red Fire Kingdom. He wanted to see if he could accept any missions. Because the Red Fire Kingdom had sent a lot of talented professionals, but now that they had all died here, they had to demand an explanation. But the Emerald Grand Duchy was not a vassal of the Red Fire Kingdom, so he could not exert too much pressure on them. William could rely on his handsome looks to receive some important missions. The most important thing was the strength of the Red Fire Kingdom was extraordinary. They were the strongest human kingdom besides the 3 empires. If William could build a good relationship with them in the early stages of the game, it would be very beneficial for the future development of the City of Dawn. From then on, the City of Dawn would not have to worry about the mercenary missions. The most important thing was that the Red Fire Kingdom was really warlike and rich. Meanwhile, the Lord of the Dark Knight City was furious. Osmond stood up abruptly and smashed the innocent table with his palm. What are you saying? He roared. Not only did we not kill Brian, the troll leader is missing, and the bloodline fruit is also lost. Yes, that seems to be the case, Lord. A dark knight said awkwardly. Dark creatures were not without intelligence. The advanced Dark Knight in front of him had intelligence that was comparable to ordinary humans. It was a pity that they were not very familiar with digging tunnels. In addition, the cave had collapsed too severely, and the traces that William had dug out had been buried. Osmond glanced at the slightly intelligent Dark Knight. The corners of his mouth twitched. He knew that he did not need to waste his breath with these dark creatures. He waved his hand and let the Dark Knight leave. When there were no outsiders, he pushed open the secret door and entered a very noble and elegant room. Various strange runes and incantations were hung on the wall. On the table beside the room, there were colorful crystal balls and magical equipment. Not far away, an elderly man without legs was sitting on a chair. The old man held a transparent crystal ball in his arms. He did not care about Osmond. He frowned and kept caressing the crystal ball with his hands. Half an hour passed. The old fortune teller with a broken leg coughed out a mouthful of blood. Osmond hurriedly ran over and patted the fortune teller's back. He said softly, "You once asked me to predict the location of the 4th map of the blood essence of the blood dragon. At that time, there was a layer of fog in front of me. But when I did the divination again, I realized that the 2 lines had suddenly connected." What do you mean? Osmond Lothar was very respectful of the old fortune teller. It was because of the fortune teller that he had helped him so much that he could rise to where he was now. If not for the old fortune teller's meticulous divination, he would have been able to come back to life at every step. How could he survive until now under the attacks of the 3 forces? Back then, how weak was he? Osmond's power and influence were getting stronger, but he had to stand at a higher position to understand the terrifying power of the old man in front of him. The old fortune teller had never used other magic spells before. His divination abilities were beyond the reach of many people. The old fortune teller pushed the wheelchair and held the crystal ball with both hands. It was as if he was caressing his wife's cheeks. He gently placed the crystal ball on the decorative shelf. Then he smiled amiably and said, "I saw that the two lines of the blood fruit and the blood essence of the blood dragon map are connected. Just now, I felt like I was in endless darkness, but I saw a ray of light. It was dazzling, bright, and full of hope. It's in the south." Ray of light? Gurdanases. It seems like my prediction was right. Osmond narrowed his eyes. He knew that Gurdanases had this map, but he did not make a move. In the end, Gurdanases had entered the dark world. At that time, Osmond was infuriated, but he returned to the surface. In the end, not only did he die in the attack on the City of Dawn, but he also lost the map. Osmond suspected that the Lord of the City of Dawn had taken the map, but the old fortune teller could not confirm it. At that time, the map seemed to be shrouded in mist. No matter how hard the old fortune teller tried, he could not find any useful information. Without concrete evidence, Osmond did not want to provoke the Lord of a powerful force. But now, Osmond narrowed his eyes. The Lord of the City of Dawn had spoiled his plans twice. It was time to let him know the true meaning of darkness. After finding out the location of William and his companions from the old fortune teller, Osmond pushed open the door and left. The old fortune teller lazily raised his eyebrows and said, "Who covered your body with mist? If I hadn't been paying attention to this ambush, I wouldn't have been able to capture you in such a short time." In the fortune-telling shop of the City of Dawn, many players were giving money to the shop in hopes of getting into the good books. It was a pity that Moses did not even look at the players. He only petted his cat. Until just now, he suddenly raised his eyebrows and smiled. He waved his hand and chased all the players out of the shop. He cupped the black cat's big round face and said, "Black meow, black meow, tell me, who could decipher my divination skills?" Meow meow. The black cat was an outstanding meow alien. It would not yield. It only meowed a few times before struggling to escape from Moses' hands. It ran to the side and ignored the crazy fellow. Moses calmly looked towards the north. His gaze pierced through space and landed in front of a certain person. At this moment, the old fortune teller, who was hiding in Osmond's secret room, was stunned. He looked at his surroundings, and his expression changed drastically. He had never expected that deciphering the mist of a fortune teller would allow someone to break through his defenses and discover his existence. That gaze had not left his body. It was as if the person had seen through his previous life. The old fortune teller was so depressed that he even felt like dying. He wanted to slap himself in the face, cursing himself for being so curious. His eyes were asking for too much. He could only pray that the person would not reveal his aura and location. But fortunately, there was. That person had no intention of revealing his existence. A cold voice entered his ears, demanding a large amount of extremely precious magic materials. The old fortune teller's legs had already been broken, but now a pair of elemental legs were formed. He hurriedly stood up and bowed respectfully. I will. I will send someone to deliver it to the place you mentioned in 3 days." Subsequently, Messiah's gaze faded. The old fortune teller sat down on the chair and took a deep breath of the beautiful air, freedom. How nice. Alive. How nice. There were so many gods in the world who had reincarnated, but how many of them had actually survived? How many of them had successfully escaped the pursuit of the saints? Even though he was the god of divination, didn't he still have his legs amputated and almost die? However, he was still a little curious. Who was that existence that had discovered him just now? Tui, if I don't change my curious hobby, I'll fall again. The old man shook his head and decided to focus on his cultivation for the time being, not caring about anything else. William was not just an NPC. He was also a player. When Osmond Lothar sent out the assassins, he had received the mission information. Mysterious bounty. Someone is out to kill you. Please stop the bounty. Mission level A+. Mission information. Only by defeating the bounty again and again will the bounty hunter acknowledge your strength. Work hard, brother. Mission reward? Bounty? How can I kill me underground? William was a little curious, but since the bounty had been issued, he had to be careful. Hence, when the dark creatures gradually dispersed, William let Alec and Violent Dragon bring the troll to the base of the Dawn mercenary team and send him home. William led the others to escort the injured Brian home. At the same time, he tried to hook up with the Red Flame Kingdom to see if he could obtain some missions. William, Burncinder, Diablo, Wales, and Brian started to run towards the north at an extremely fast speed. Brian's anus had not healed for a long time, and it was corroded by the black poison. He was in excruciating pain, and he could not run. Burncinder and the others took turns to carry him. William could have used a life potion to completely remove the side effects. He could even revive Brian on the spot. But the life potion could not be revealed easily. More importantly, even though Brian was strong, everyone was a legendary. There was no need to spoil him. He was just a middleman that William used to contact the Red Flame Kingdom. Although there were many dark toxins, they were not fatal. As long as there was a perfect treatment plan, Brian's anus could become tighter. At least, he would not have to relieve himself. And now, Brian couldn't help but fart and poop. Every time he farted, his face would show an expression of pain that made him wish he was dead. One could imagine. Adolf's sword was definitely poisonous. This was not something that the Black Flame battle energy could achieve. As time passed, when William and his companions had run more than 10 kilometers, they could feel their pursuers approaching. Brian thought that the pursuers were coming to kill him. He immediately shouted, 12,000 magical stones. Bosses, don't leave me behind. William said righteously, protect him. I'll deal with the pursuers. Chapter 265. Brian Scarlet Flame thought that the enemies were after him. During the siege, he discovered that the bounty hunters had the intention to kill him and his followers. In particular, the dark creatures were besieging him with all their might. If he hadn't been lucky enough to bump into Alec, who didn't want to expose himself, and saved him, he probably wouldn't even be able to make it to his grave. When Brian saw the pursuers again, he was filled with anger. He wanted to know who wanted to kill him. If it was the Emerald Grand Duchy, he would teach them a lesson. It had to be said. The royal family of the Red Fire Kingdom had the surname Scarlet Flame. The Marquis Scarlet Flame family also had the royal blood of the kingdom flowing in their veins. This kingdom had been established for less than 800 years, and it had been built by two brothers. In the end, the elder brother became the king and changed his surname to Scarlet Flame. The younger brother became the prince and changed his surname to Scarlet Flame. But according to the aristocratic rules of the human empires, the prince had to be at least an epic titled professional. If there were no epic titled professionals in 2 generations, the nobility of the family would be demoted. The current Scarlet Flame family, regardless of whether it was the veteran experts or the young experts, had been killed in battle. The family leader was only an advanced professional, and his nobility had been demoted by 2 levels. Brian Scarlet Flame was not only the new hope of his family, but he was also one of the top genius professionals in the Red Fire Kingdom. It could be said that killing Brian was equivalent to killing a prince of the Red Fire Kingdom. William threw away his black robe and held his sword hilt with his right hand. He dashed towards the enemies. Diablo and Burncinder did the same. Wales was protecting Brian, who was severely injured and could not move. Kill them. Don't leave anyone alive. A voice rang out. 8 figures appeared from the surrounding trees. They charged towards William and his companions. Why are there so few of them? William was curious, but when he used his insight, his expression changed drastically. There were 2 legendary, 3 epic, and 3 Grandmaster vampires. They were all advanced vampires, blood shadow assassins. The prince sucked in a breath of cold air. He had never imagined that he would actually encounter the Dark City's trump card assassination team. Leave this observant lad to me. You guys deal with the rest. One of the slender vampires licked his lips in disgust and immediately transformed into dozens of bats that charged toward William. William looked at the guy in front of him and could not help but grin. Blood Shadow King, Blood Devil. His Royal Highness was a little worried. The vampire's ability to control blood was purely instinctive. However, within the same rank, who had the best blood control ability. It was none other than the blood demon in front of him. His ability to control blood could be considered destructive, just like Diablo's ability to control metal. In a group battle, he could guarantee that his enemies would explode into puddles of blood. But William was not afraid of this. What was even more impressive was that he had spatial talent. He could constantly teleport in battle. He was a natural assassin. However, the blood demon's spatial innate talent was a killer move. It was the kind of ultimate move that couldn't leave any survivors once it was used, and it could prevent the enemy from being on guard. Therefore, the players did not know about this news in the early stages. When William saw the blood devil transform into bats and charge towards him, he activated the thunder shield and retreated. He continuously knocked down many trees, but he did not slow down. He wanted to distance himself from the blood explosion skill to prevent the blood explosion skill. He said in a deep voice, "Be careful. This group of vampires is very strong. Wales, bring Prince William away first." "Got it. Fortunately, I have brought enough magic scrolls." Burned Cinder raised his eyebrows. He gripped his dragon slayer saber tightly. When fiery battle energy surged out of the blade, the entire saber was like magma. There were even liquefied flames flowing on the blade. It was as if he had changed his weapon skin. It was extremely cool. In front of Burned Cinder was another legendary vampire. That vampire instantly transformed into countless bats that charged towards Burned Cinder from all directions. Burned Cinder was not to be outdone. With an angry roar, a pillar of fire suddenly appeared under his feet and enveloped him. However, this was not the end. He glanced at the bats around him, and the flaming sword light instantly transformed into a sword screen. Wherever the sword light passed, the bats in front of him, left and right, turned into ashes. But it did not cause any significant damage. That was because the legendary vampire's true body had already dodged when the curtain of swords appeared. Blair was lying on Whale's back. He was puzzled. "I'm Prince William, the son of Marquis, but I have royal blood flowing in my veins." "What he said is correct, buddy. Prince William, Lord of the City of Dawn." Blood Devil glanced at the severely injured Brian. He had a look of sudden realization. Then, he ordered two vampires to bypass Burned Cinder and the rest and charge towards Brian. As for the half-elves' pointy ears, Brian had never seen an elf before. How could he think so much? Gosh. Boss, hurry up and run. They are really here to kill me." Brian saw that there were more vampires chasing after him. He cursed the group of vampires in his heart. He was sure that they were assassins sent by the Emerald Grand Duchy. Wales carried him on his back and ran towards the north. He used Brian as a shield to block the attacks from behind. Poof, poof, poof. 3 consecutive attacks hit Brian's buttocks once again, causing him to scream in pain. Brian felt that his buttocks had been completely destroyed. But no matter how much he urged, Wales replied calmly, "My legs are short, so I can run slowly." There was no other way. His attributes were all on his physical strength. Furthermore, he had a meat shield behind him. The attacks of the vampires were like tickles to him. There was no damage at all. Even though Wales was cunning, he condensed a layer of hard soil to block Brian's back. But the two of them ran even slower. The battle continued. When Diablo faced the vampires, he only needed to use magic scrolls. He did not have to worry about the blood control technique. He could easily beat up the vampires. In addition, William had given him a space ring. Hence, his metal storm was free. Because the space ring was filled with various metals and some rare metals, he could use them to his heart's content. Occasionally, he would have a small explosion. All the plants and animals within a radius of tens of meters were instantly turned into pieces. The most impressive thing was that the metals could be used multiple times. He could now fight 3 vampires alone, and he could even help Burned Cinder. Suddenly, everything was a mess. But William was in an awkward situation. He quickly used the magic scrolls to defend against the blood control technique. The blood devil in front of him was very powerful. He kept using the blood control technique to deplete the magic in the magic scrolls. "I can't let this drag on. Even if I don't kill him, I have to injure him. Otherwise, I'll lose the magic scrolls. I'll die here. William had thick skin and good equipment, but he could not withstand the blood control technique. In addition, there were no monsters for him to sacrifice, so he could not recover much health points. It had to be said that this was a sad story. Hence, William did not avoid the battle. Instead, he activated the power of the Saint Spirit. All his attributes increased by 23%, and his speed increased tremendously. He charged at the Blood Devil and slashed out 9 streaks of sword energy. But the Blood Devil transformed into a few bats and easily dodged the sword energy. He transformed back into his human form and clenched his fist at William. Bang! William felt all the blood vessels in his body explode. Fresh blood gushed out of his throat. He forcefully swallowed it and crushed another scroll. Meanwhile, he suddenly dodged and hid behind a large tree. The Blood Devil was a little puzzled. What level were they at? Was there any use hiding behind a tree? But in the next moment, a silent ghost arrow flew towards his face. The Blood Devil was surprised. He tilted his head back, but his scalp was grazed by the arrow. Hence, William, who was enveloped by the Saint Spirit, traversed through space and appeared in front of the Blood Devil. When the Blood Devil saw this scene, he was shocked. But this method of attack made him involuntarily use his space endowment. He instantly teleported to a position 10 meters away. But William seemed to have sensed it. He immediately extended a huge soul hand and grabbed the Blood Devil 10 meters away. Fast speed, high attack, and powerful magic. But its weakness is its light body. William used the Hand of Soul to grab the Blood Devil and pulled him over. Both of them were face to face again. Swish! William once again slashed out a thunder sword energy that looked like a full moon. It was extremely dazzling. The Blood Devil transformed into a few bats and easily dodged it. But at the same time, a visible soul shock wave instantly expanded outwards with William at the center. A few small bats suffered a heavy blow in midair, and some of them dissipated. Only one bat transformed into a human and fell to the ground in a daze. William seized the opportunity. When he ran over, he activated the Dawn Assault and collided with the Blood Devil. But the Blood Devil, who seemed to be in a daze, instantly vanished. Instead, he appeared behind the frantically running William. He held a blood-red short sword and stabbed it at William's back. Crack! Sparks flashed. The short sword did not penetrate William's heart, as it was blocked by the Fire Dragon's scale. It could only penetrate the armor and inner armor and stab William's back. But this attack from a back, it still caused more than 3,000 points of damage to William. The Blood Devil was slightly surprised. Just as he was about to stab again, the Sword of Hex in William's hand shone brightly. Boom! Streaks of pitch-black destructive sword energy instantly charged in all directions. Everything within a radius of a few hundred meters was reduced to ashes. Even the Blood Devil behind William could not dodge. His body was pierced by the streaks of sword energy, and he was sent flying hundreds of meters away. But William did not give up. It would be best if he could kill the Blood Devil in advance. So he drew his bow and fired another arrow. Swish! Countless thunder arrows rained down on the spot where the Blood Devil had fallen. But not only did the fallen blood demon not dodge, but he also stood straight and gently waved his hand. Countless thunder arrows instantly disappeared. William's expression did not change. He took a deep breath and charged forward with his 2 weapons. The Blood Devil did not use his space endowment, which consumed a lot of his magic. He charged at William. The 2 of them could be considered to be evenly matched, but the Blood Devil knew that the moment William used up his magic scrolls, he would die. William sneered. Did the Blood Devil realize that his recovery speed had slowed down? Did he want to fight in close combat with him? Did he not know that he had the Bloodthirst sword? Let's see how much blood a vampire like him has. Chapter 266. He had no way of escaping, but after 10 minutes of intense battle. But, prompt, you have survived the first attack of the mysterious killing order. There were 4 of epic quality. William only hoped that the next attack would be slower, so that he would have less of an adrenaline rush. He ate it in 2 or 3 bites, Wasn't it supposed to be sour and sweet? Why was it only sweet now? William was helpless. The attack power of this sword was 1,300, 3,800. If it weren't for the fact that their dochi was unleashed to extinguish the flames, a forest fire that angered the magical beasts would have been unavoidable. Large patches of trees fell to the ground. He had also killed a vampire. Under the impact of the fire, not even a strand of hair was left behind. Wait a minute. His recovery speed is faster than mine? Crack. They hurriedly ran back or used magic voice transmission to transmit the news. According to the players, there was no video recording. They would not believe it. Effect: all attributes plus 20. Even if William was a legendary NPC, he would not be able to kill a blood devil of the same level. William's right heart was pierced when the blood devils charged at him again. Only a few believed that William had died. The battle had been intense, but William was nowhere to be seen. There were 9 of them. The scene returned to William and his companions. No. He clutched his chest and hovered in midair. He glanced at his dead and injured teammates and glared at William. He waved his hand and shouted with his eyes, "Retreat," because he had already used it. He had suffered tens of thousands of points of damage. Both of them brandished their weapons at the same time. All sorts of shocking headlines claimed that William had died in the Nightmare Forest during an adventure to obtain the blood fruit. He had died under the siege of countless dark creatures. But his luck was only 1, so it was difficult to trigger the 3,800 attack power limit. They vaguely sensed a conspiracy. When William saw them leave, he almost fell to the ground, but he managed to stabilize himself. He looked around and said in a deep voice, "Let's run. The Blood Devils are looking for reinforcements. The Nightmare Forest is their territory. They will definitely make use of the dark creatures. If we are surrounded by the dark creatures in the Devil's Den, we will be doomed." But did the Blood Demon really not notice that his saber was about to be cut in half? William used the Sword of Hex and the Blade of Thunder. The combination of the sword and the blade was a short one and a long one. One drank blood, while the other drank thunder. He should have died many times by now, but he was still full of energy, and his recovery speed was not any slower than that of a blood breed like him. Not all the professionals in the Emerald Grand Duchy were fools. The next moment, William asked Wales to send Brian away. The Blood Demon's long saber was cut in half, and the black sword light left a bloody wound on his chest. It was a bloody battle. The moment the blood-colored longsword broke, the Blood Demon suddenly took a step forward and took the opportunity to stab William's neck with his short sword. He could only lead the 2 vampires in circles, causing Brian's but to be hit hard. This legendary little brother was about to cry from the beating. Impossible. My recovery speed is getting slower. The Blood Demon was horrified to discover a problem. His recovery speed was getting slower and slower. However, it was just as he had said. For someone who could become an advanced magus, especially someone like the Blood Demon who danced on the tip of a blade, how could he not have a strong combat sense? An indescribable lightning teleported and pierced through the Blood Demon's chest, blasting the trees behind him into pieces. Not only was the Blood Demon resistant, but his recovery speed was also very strong. He was definitely not a normal close combat ranger. There was another problem with the black longsword. What about William? Woo woo woo. The Blood Demon howled in pain. It was a pity that his mouth had been smashed, and he could only make buzzing sound from his trachea. Meanwhile, boom. Why did the dark creatures let them go? They ran for more than 20 kilometers without stopping before they gradually escaped from the pursuit of the dark creatures. He had sensed it long ago. William did not bother with Brian. He secretly looked at the mission information. The situation was not good. It's possible. It's been such a long time, but we're the only ones who managed to escape. The rest are trapped inside. An indescribable roar, or rather, an ultrasonic wave, entered William's head. Nightmare Forest. He slowly took out the blood fruit. He didn't even show his head. They were still 330 kilometers away from the Red Fire Kingdom. The other vampires flapped their wings and hurriedly retreated. But the Blood Demon was not convinced. He used his remaining 2 eyes to stare at William. His body kept expanding, and a pair of bat-like dragon wings extended from his back. But it was a pity that the blood demon used teleportation again to avoid the murderous William. The blood demon, who had just spread his wings, knelt on the ground. He looked like he was on the verge of death. But the blood demon was more ruthless. He only avoided the vital parts and extended his glowing left hand to punch the blood demon's head. After all, the nightmare forest was very long. It did not make sense that there were devil's dens everywhere. Oh, function, increase bloodline potential, NPC, prompt. However, in the nightmare forest, the mastermind will continue to pursue you until all the pursuers are dead or you die. Big bosses. Brian looked at the 3 people in front of him. He wanted to ask if someone else could carry him, but he realized that William and the others' injuries seemed to be more serious than his, so he didn't have the nerve to say that. Wouldn't those genius professionals have died in vain? But William glanced at Burned Cinder and Diablo, who were envious of him. He decided to forget about it. Meichuan noticed that everyone was feeling uneasy. He pursed his lips and said, "Don't worry. With Prince William's high-level skills, he won't die anytime soon. I guess they didn't come here. Don't spread rumors on the forum." William suddenly gave him the middle finger, but the situation was too tense. He could see that the pursuers were very strong. He hated himself for not having the strength to fight. He used his blood control skill again. Pom, 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 pom. Although Meichuan wanted to control the situation, the players were just there to watch the fun. After a while, a few posts appeared on the forum of the City of Dawn. Burned Cinder held the lava dragon-slaying blade in his hand. It was very lethal. Wherever the blade flashed, flames bloomed in the sky. Effect: randomly increase one's endowment level. Some of the surrounding trees had already started burning. Crack. William's situation was horrible. He was bleeding from his 7 orifices. He looked like he was about to die. What about Wales, who was carrying Brian? The power of destruction could ignore the defense of most equipment. It could also destroy the durability of the equipment. There was a commotion on the forum. For example, sometimes the damage that William dealt to himself was very high, but sometimes it was very low, but William's sort of curses had a special effect. Of course, the Blood Devil's ordinary face had completely collapsed. His chin had been smashed away, and his nose had disappeared. He had become a monster with only 2 eyes. Every time he was hit by the sword, his recovery would become very slow. Initially, he did not feel anything. He could only deal great damage if he hit the critical spot. Quality: Legendary William dashed forward again. Lightning continued to fall from the sky, striking William's head. It was a fatal blow to him. A few of them dashed forward again. They discovered many dark creatures searching the forest. F*CK. His Highness wouldn't have died, right? He gradually sensed that something was wrong. Most of the damage was very low, but there would be powerful attacks from time to time. He felt a little uncomfortable. The blessings of the inner armor were useless. Otherwise, if he appeared later on, he would be surrounded. This doesn't make sense. I'm not your relative, let alone your brother. We look like the difference between heaven and earth. Why aren't you dark knights attacking us? What do you mean? The Blood Devil used a long and narrow crimson blade. The blade flashed very quickly. Every time it slashed through the air, it would leave a trail of blood in the air. It also had the negative effect of losing a lot of health points. An unknown battle was taking place. Crackle. The Blood Devil started to use his skills to exchange damage for damage. It was a bloody battle. Both of them fought fiercely. The Blood Devil was very enthusiastic, but he did not realize that his weapon was about to be destroyed. There was a huge bloody hole in the Blood Devil's chest. His heart had completely disappeared. Blood fruit hints. William narrowed his eyes and opened his mouth. The Blood Devil discovered problem. Everything else was different, but Burned Cinder's fighting style was too wild. Even if the other forces believed that this was a trap and conspiracy set by the Dark Faction. Meanwhile, Crack. Friendly reminder. Eat him or sell him to an NPC for a sky-high price. Should he try eating another one? William and the Blood Devil started fighting again. But they would not be satisfied if they did not take advantage of the Emerald Grand Duchy. However, Dark City's scheme was an overt one. As long as some news was deliberately spread, the Emerald Grand Duchy would be blamed for colluding with the dark creatures. At this moment, effect, health points plus 1,000. Friendly reminder. Escaping from the nightmare forest is the only way to survive. His health points dropped to the bottom, at the eastern border of the nightmare forest. This time, it was a duel. William channeled half of his battle energy into the Sword of Hegni, and the light of dawn exploded. This was the first time the Blood Shadow Assassin team had encountered such a powerful enemy. It was also the first time they had suffered such severe injuries. Even though William had used magic scrolls, the blood vessels in his body continued to rupture. In addition, the mental attack had slowed down his thinking. There were 5 legendary quality vampires. The metal spear exploded into metal fragments, and the vampire was also blasted into minced meat with a horrified expression. Diablo seized the opportunity and attacked with his spear. A few metal spears pierced through the sky, and a vampire was nailed to a tree. William scratched his head. They had been running around randomly, and no one knew where they had gone. But he flew up into the sky and determined his direction. Then, he decided to continue heading north. Oh, hence, the players had followed the professionals of the Emerald Grand Duchy in a daze. But now, they were confused. Chapter 267. When William swallowed the blood fruit, a burst of energy suddenly erupted in his stomach. That extremely comfortable energy spread through his entire body, almost causing the prince to moan. Fortunately, William stopped and protected his pride at the crucial moment. However, the legendary bloodline fruit was still very effective. Prompt: you have swallowed the legendary blood fruit. All your attributes plus 20. Your health points plus 1,000. Your endowment, advanced hardened skin, will be upgraded to body of steel. Wong Defa. William was in disbelief. He had never expected that the random upgrade of the endowment would be this. Moreover, it had directly upgraded his body of steel. Gosh, that's way too perverted. It was a comprehensive enhancement to his defense. Besides the fact that he could not defend against mental attacks and the blood control skill, he was a super meat shield. That's awesome. Even if my health points are low, I'm still a legendary boss. Moreover, my defense is so high. It's outrageous. William was dumbfounded. The body of steel was inferior to the diamond body, extraordinary body, and godly body. But to William, it was an unimaginably godly endowment. Endowment, body of steel, 1 point of physical strength equals 2 points of defense. Your defense will be increased by 200 points, and your health points will be increased by 2,000 points. With the addition of the bloodline potential, I have a total of 1174. 8 defense. This does not include the additional defense from my equipment. It's a total of 2,000 defense. William swallowed his saliva. With such a strong defense, under certain circumstances, he did not need to care about the normal attacks of some professionals. What about the players? TSK. Miss, other than their ultimate skills, which would cause him to lose tens or hundreds of health points, the rest of the time, the damage would be 0. And this did not include the battle energy shield. But the crucial moment had arrived. He did not know how much the blood fruit could increase his bloodline potential. But it was obvious that he already had a legendary bloodline. There was no way for him to increase his bloodline potential. Prompt: your bloodline potential has been upgraded. From 1% increase in 4-dimensional attributes to 1. 1% increase in 4-dimensional attributes with each upgrade. The maximum increase in bloodline potential is level 100. It's not a small amount. It's really not a small amount. Even if it increases by 0.1%, when I reach level 100, it will become 110%. It's equivalent to an additional 10% increase in all attributes. William heaved a sigh of relief. He was amazed by the effects of the legendary blood fruit. He knew, if the legendary bloodline fruit was given to someone else, it would be even more effective. However, he was not only a lord, but also a player with only 1 life. This item was obtained by him, so there was no reason for him to give it to his subordinate. Even if they were his confidants, they had to be loyal and hardworking enough to be rewarded with these things. Of course, Burn Cinder and the others definitely had to pay. After all, they had contributed a lot in this battle. Hence, William took out 2 epic quality blood fruits and threw them to the 2 people who were staring at him. "Thank you, sir. Thank you, your highness." Burn Cinder and Diablo laughed and wolfed down the blood fruits that they had just obtained. They didn't even spit out the cores. Thinking of this, William was stunned. He didn't seem to spit out the cores. "They won't grow in my stomach, right?" William stroked his chin and ignored the 2. Then he sent Brian away and gave Wales a blood fruit. He didn't give them the legendary blood fruit because for legendary NPCs, the blood fruit could only improve their bloodlines. The key was to upgrade their endowments. He had just tried it. It was better to eat the epic blood fruit. Perhaps it could increase their endowments by 5%. Then he would gamble on his luck to see if he could upgrade their endowments to become stronger. As for the other blood fruits, William gave them to his subordinates as rewards, such as Violent Dragon, Alec, Odom, Lautner, Eric, Captain Jack, and the others. If they did well, their bloodline potential might become legendary. If there were a few more legendary bloodlines, then the benefits would be maximized. Burn Cinder and the others couldn't tell which blood fruit was better. Anyway, it was good enough that they had something to eat. The 3 of them swallowed the blood fruit and covered their mouths. They were afraid that they would scream out loud. That was because the feeling of increasing one's innate talent had completely melted into one's bones. It was more than 10 times better than the so-called affairs between a man and a woman. Brian glanced at Wales and the others with a sneaky expression. He smacked his lips, but he didn't dare to make a sound. He guessed what the fruit was, but he could only swallow his saliva, because the blood fruit couldn't be measured by price. Moreover, William Blackleaf was a neutral lord. He had a lot of trusted subordinates, and he didn't lack money. Brian didn't intend to buy the blood fruit. Moreover, he said that he didn't know where the blood fruit was. If he said that he wanted to buy it, wouldn't he be slapping himself in the face? Annoying others for no reason was not something an outstanding genius would do. Brian pretended that he didn't know anything. He took out some fruit from his space ring and munched on them. He only hoped that he could quickly return home and heal the wound on his buttocks. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to eat and fart at the same time. After William finished enjoying the blood fruit, he continued to run. There were many pursuers in the Nightmare Forest. Besides the magical beasts, the devil's dens near the Dark City had to listen to the commands of the Lord of the Dark City. They didn't just have to face the Dark City. They had to face countless dark creatures wandering in the forest. The skeleton soldiers, dark knights, and dark monitor lizards weren't a problem. They couldn't even stop them for a second. But they were afraid that they would be discovered. So William and his companions would burrow into the ground every 3 hours and dig tunnels to hide their tracks. After the Blood Devil and his companions returned in defeat, they were scolded by Osmond for half an hour. They were even beaten up. Then, Osmond gave them some healing potions and comforted them. Then, he asked the Blood Devil to gather enough manpower to continue the chase. The vampires were slapped and thrown a few red dates. They were in a good mood. In particular, they didn't dare to disobey Osmond's orders. They had been adopted by Osmond Lothar since young. Many of their companions had died during their growth. But as long as they could stand out, they were all given the most wonderful first embraces in the world. There was nothing wrong with that. The children who grew up in the Dark City all thought that the blood race was the orthodox race and that the humans were inferior creatures. It could be said that most of the vampires in Darkness City were raised by Osmond Lothar himself. In terms of loyalty, there was no way to pick on them. The Blood Devil and his companions were very respectful to Osmond. They treated him like a father. Oh, the father of the vampires was also known as the Ghost Father. William's tunneling strategy allowed him to evade most of the detection. He hadn't seen any dark creatures for 3 days. Even the sense of danger in his heart was gradually disappearing. Now that William had some free time, he started to increase Brian's affinity level. William didn't even have to do much. He just had to pose and chat with Brian. From time to time, he would hear notifications of Brian's affinity level increasing. "Butler, according to what you said, your family is very powerful. You have the royal bloodline?" William pretended to be shocked, but his eyes were filled with admiration. When Brian saw William's expression, he couldn't help but secretly rejoice. He laughed and said, This is well known in the Red Fire Kingdom. You don't know that I grew up in the palace. Now, the first prince is like my brother. When he inherits the throne, as long as I can become an epic titled expert, I will lead my family to become a prince's family. Impressive, impressive. But the crown prince might not inherit the throne. It doesn't matter to me. We're brothers, so I can't harm you. But some people with ulterior motives, you know. William gave him a kind look, as if he was thinking for his brother's sake. Brian was a little touched, and his affinity level continued to increase. But he still smiled and shook his head. You still don't understand the Red Fire Kingdom. The Red Fire Kingdom is a royal family. But because of the martial arts, it's usually passed down to only one person. Most of the time, we don't even have a prince. So there's no need to consider the situation of fighting for the throne. When a royal family doesn't have a prince, they will adopt a male from the Red Fire family and make him the crown prince. So our relationship is very good. Even if others hear this, they will understand what is going on. William pretended to be enlightened and nodded. But he thought to himself, maybe it's intentional, because kingdoms and empires all have ways to test one's endowments. His Royal Highness had once discovered a secret, which was that in some powerful families, the males of the family would be tested for talent almost at the moment of birth. If the endowments were poor and did not reach the expectations of the elders, they would not let the male live. They would tell the mother that her son was unlucky and died at birth. This way, not only would it not waste the family's resources, but it would also not drag down the potential of the family's bloodline. If every family and every royal family carried out a survival of the fittest selection method, only the best males would be left to inherit the bloodline. Then, they would choose an outstanding spouse for their children. Then, they would not need to persist for tens of generations. They only needed to persist for tens of generations. Then, from then on, how strong would the bloodline potential of their children be? There would not be any weaklings, okay? Because their genes could be said to be perfect. For example, the royal princes and princesses of the 3 human empires. They were all legendary and epic. This was not achieved by piling up resources. Instead, they were produced by the survival of the fittest. When William thought of this, he suddenly understood why it was so difficult to breed elves. When the elves were still small tadpoles, they had probably started to play the survival of the fittest game. This game lasted for 10 years. As for the human empires and kingdoms, would it cause the population to be less prosperous? Actually, it was possible. After all, after tens of generations, the population would become more and more prosperous. But when the forest was big, there were all kinds of birds. When the population increased, there might be some dregs. As for the powerful families, whether they would still kill such children depended on the mood of the family elders and clan leaders. Chapter 268. Just as William was fleeing for his life, the players of the City of Dawn began to miss their prince. It was because the other NPCs were so troublesome. Currently, the players of the City of Dawn were carrying out 2 missions. One was the endless exploration of the sea. The other was to help the Slowland Dukedom defeat the dark creatures and rebuild their homeland. 2 S-rank missions were supposed to be the kind where one could eat and drink well. But the players were used to William leading the charge while they followed behind to kill the defeated enemies. But now, they discovered that not all NPCs treated them well, and not all NPCs were brave enough to charge. Not all NPCs cared about their lives and deaths. Many times, if William sent them to their deaths, there would be an additional mission reward to replenish their lost experience and equipment. But in the Slowland Dukedom, no matter whether it was the king who had lost his country or the nobles, they could only be described with one word: stingy. They only had one main storyline mission reward per day. Although it was quite a lot, it was much more than some mercenaries, and it was the same as their foreign friends. But it was better than being under William's command. The tens of thousands of players in the Slowland Dukedom missed William even more. They were like good men who had not seen their wives for a few months, but were still very self-controlled. Now, they were unable to endure the hunger and thirst, but compared to the players in the Slowland Dukedom, the 15,000 players who left with the fleet were better off. They had followed the fleet and seen many sea beasts, small islands, and some terrifying deep-sea monsters. If the two ships of the fleet did not have cannons and the giant dragon's intimidation, they would have been wiped out in the sea. It took them half a month to do so. Finally, with Captain Jack's bad luck, they found the Merman Island. That was right. This island was not small, and there were many magical beasts on the mainland. But there were large mere-people living in the sea by the seaside. They were about 3 to 1, 5 meters tall, which was similar to the average height of the dwarfs. The fleet was often attacked when they landed, and the small mere-people had the geographical advantage. They fought an extremely difficult landing battle. Not only did they have to face the mere-people on the shore, but they also had to defend against the mere-people that came out of the sea. But fortunately, the two epic warships had cannons. The two fleets placed all the cannons on one side, and hundreds of cannons roared at the same time. The white beach was instantly covered by the cannons and turned pitch black. The magically enhanced cannons caused unimaginable damage and psychological trauma to the large mere-people. This group of trident-wielding murlocs were immediately dumbfounded because they had never seen cannons before. Their hearts were filled with fear. After a few rounds of cannon fire, tens of thousands of little man-fish were killed, and the rest of the little fellows scattered in all directions. The players were the first to land and started fighting with the small mere-people who did not want to leave their homes. In short, it was more like an invasion of primitive people. Anyway, the two S-level missions of the players were not easy. There were still hundreds of thousands of dark creatures left in the Slovan Empire. The players of the City of Dawn were the main force. The players cursed at the NPCs all day long, saying that their rewards were not enough. They were only of the Dawn of Royal of Knights. They're of Dawn of the of Knights, of the Royal, of Row Kingdom, of King. Of currently, apart from the Imperial Guard Corps, which still had over 1,000 people, the rest of the Corps could only form a total of 5 corps. This was the foundation of the country. How would they dare to use it to fight against the dark creatures? If they wanted to restore their country, they could only rely on mercenaries and the Temple Knights who came to help. However, there were so many players in the City of Dawn. Even though the rewards for each player were not enough, what would happen if all of them were to be pooled together? It was an astronomical figure every day. If it weren't for the fact that the king and the nobles were united, they wouldn't have been able to afford the players' rewards. Chanli Jyoga and the other professional players did not participate in the 2 main missions. Their hearts were as clear as a mirror. The S-rank mission seemed to have a good reward, but they had already seen through the essence of it. Without His Highness, the so-called S-rank mission would not earn much. It would only bring some benefits to ordinary players. For professional players like them who already had a full set of gold equipment after reaching the intermediate level, they should be working hard for dark gold, epic, or even legendary equipment. Hence, they set their sights on the undeveloped Stormy Island. Do you see that? I told you that Stormy Island must have something special. Chu Liuqiu smiled and pointed at the huge mural at the bottom of the canyon. He also pointed at the temple gate that was guarded by the soldiers of the City of Dawn. Gosh, what's that? What a big gate. What's that? I've lost my insight. Everything is a question mark. Chanli Jyoga's eyes were about to pop out. He could not figure out what the ancient ruins were. Xiao Ayan pouted. His Highness has already discovered the things below. Or perhaps His Highness is here for the ruins. It's useless for us to keep thinking about it. Why don't we find some magic potions to sell to the NPCs? That'll be profitable. Chu Liuqiu licked his lips and nodded. That's right. Magic potions are very valuable to the NPCs. They can help them with their training and have other better effects. Furthermore, some rare magic potions can permanently increase the attributes. This is also good stuff for us. The experience and reward from the main mission are nothing to us. Anyway, half a year isn't enough for us to reach the advanced level. In addition to the demons that we've killed along the way, we might be able to gather a set of epic equipment in half a year. By now, the major clubs had already done their calculations. Intermediate professionals required a lot of experience points. At the end of version 2, 0, they could at most reach level 60. However, before version 2.0 ended, there would be a global competition. At that time, the chances of winning would not be determined by a few levels of attributes. The key was equipment, skills, and understanding of the game. Hence, the major clubs all over the world were planning a plan to maximize the profits for their professional players. The two major clubs in the City of Dawn, Glory and Golden Age, relied heavily on Stormy Island. As for the new clubs, they would slowly follow them. Anyway, the professional players' skills were already top-notch. A few of them could rely on their equipment, skills, hidden occupations, and techniques to defeat some intermediate magical beasts. They could even challenge advanced magical beasts. As such, whether they sold the materials of advanced magical beasts or made them into equipment, they would definitely make a profit. There was an even more important reason for this. Some of the club's management discovered the difference between Stormy Island and the Fishman Island through the live broadcast of the players. The magical beasts and creatures on the Fishman Island were common. The things on Stormy Island were all very rare. It could even be said that Stormy Island had been separated from this world for at least a few thousand years. Hence, there must be many secrets. Even if William, the city lord, had found the big benefits, the small secrets were enough to make the professional players suffer. Stormy Island was the first to appear. So many ordinary players thought that Stormy Island was not a big deal. Hence, they did not pay much attention to the resources on Stormy Island. The professional players knew this little secret. Some high-level players also knew this little secret, but no one was willing to share it. They wanted to obtain enough resources on Stormy Island. Hence, they revealed everything. When the ordinary players completed the 2S level missions, they would play with the remaining resources. 5 to 6 days passed. William and his companions did not encounter the pursuit of the vampires. But what was destined to come would come. This time, the Blood Devil brought along more Blood Shadow assassins. There were as many as 20 advanced assassins, but they were fortunate. Recently, William had been trying to increase his affinity with Brian. 2 days ago, he struck while the iron was hot. In order to increase his affinity to 800 points, he gave Brian a drop of life potion to detoxify the poison. Brian had revived on the spot. His buttocks had been restored to their original exquisite state. His combat power had been restored. Hence, there were 20 Blood Shadow assassins. There were 3 legendary, 6 epic, and other grandmasters. They were going to face 5 legendary bosses who were in their best states. William smiled as he held the Sword of Hex. He looked at the Blood Devil, who had changed his weapon. He could not help but laugh. "Oh, you have a mind? You can change a top-notch weapon just because you want to? None of your business." The Blood Devil narrowed his eyes. He held a pitch-black longsword in his hand. It was the weapon that the Lord of the City had used when he was still an intermediate. The Lord of the City, who was like a father to him, had given this weapon to him. It proved how much he trusted William. He had to kill William with his sword. No, and the guy whose buttocks were injured would also die here. When he thought of this, he became angry. He had been fooled. The guy in front of him was the Lord of the City of Dawn. The one whose buttocks were injured was Brian Scarlet Flame. But both of them were going to die. It was not a big deal. He did not believe that the 5 people in front of him could escape from his pursuit. The Blood Devil waved his hand. "Kill them. Leave no one alive." At that moment, the rest of the people surrounded William and attacked the 4 people behind him. The Blood Devil wanted to fight William alone. He had to avenge his humiliation. The Blood Devil was in a good state. He used his space endowment to appear in front of William. He slashed his sword down ferociously. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At that moment, William felt goosebumps all over his body. Hence, he sneered and lifted his left hand to grab the sword. Swish! The Blood Devil knew that there was something wrong with his left hand. He did not give William a chance to grab his sword. He teleported again and appeared behind William. Puffed, puffed. 2 sounds of flesh being pierced could be heard. Both of their weapons pierced into each other's bodies. Swish! Blood splattered in midair. They pulled out their weapons at the same time. They started the most bloody melee battle. Both of them had the intention to kill each other. The Blood Devil kept using his blood control skill. He kept stabbing his sword into his opponent's body. William gritted his teeth. He did not care about the blood vessels in his body exploding. He wielded his two legendary weapons and slashed the Blood Devil until he was beyond recognition. But it was just 5 minutes. The Blood Devil was shocked again. It was because William had become stronger. Or rather, his defense was at least twice as strong as it had been a few days ago. What the hell was going on? Weren't William a ranger? Weren't William an advanced professional? Why was his skin harder than a Grandmaster professional's? Come and kill him. The Blood Devil could not take it anymore. William's magic scrolls seemed to be free. He wanted to ask if William had an enchanter in his family. Did he have nothing better to do? So he made magic scrolls for him? MMP, he was furious. Chapter 269. William did not know what the Blood Devil was thinking. Otherwise, he would definitely tell him that he had a house elf. No, it was a house enchanter. Ever since he had built the City of Dawn, he had never lacked magic scrolls. Remember, he did not lack any type of magic scrolls. The only thing he wanted was forbidden spells, but Moses would never give them to him. Other than that, Moses treated the other magic scrolls as if they were free. He would throw them at William with disdain. In particular, the favorability between the two of them had already reached 950 plus and was about to reach the mysterious 1,000 favorability points. Was this something that could be easily guessed by others? However, William had given them the Fire Dragon magic crystal, countless dark creature corpses, and various magical materials. This was definitely a very sad story. William crushed another magic scroll and charged at the Blood Devil and the rest with his sword. He did not care that they were working together. He targeted one of them and gave him a good beating. For a moment, fresh blood splattered. The sword flashed. The sound of metal colliding resounded. William was as fast as lightning. Every step he took was calculated precisely. He ensured that he received the least amount of damage while dealing the most damage. It was said that vampires had higher agility, but it depended on who they were compared to. The basic attributes of William, a half-elf, were not inferior to anyone else. When he used the power of the Saint Spirit, all his attributes increased by 23%. Coupled with the 88% legendary bloodline power, William's attributes at level 80 had increased by 111%. What did this mean? His current attributes without any equipment were so abnormal that it was unimaginable. Power, 1424, physical strength, 660, agility, 1532, intelligence, 647. There was nothing wrong with that. After his power and agility were doubled, they both reached 1400 plus. Even his weakness had reached 600 plus. Now, when William walked by, he was just a phantom in the eyes of the weaker vampires. When they swung their weapons, they would only see an afterimage. Power was equal to 0. 5 attack power. The inertial acceleration produced by agility would also produce additional hidden attack power. In addition, William had the legendary weapon in his hand. Battle energy and thunder attribute superimposed damage. Basically, the lowest damage that William could inflict was 1,700 points. The vampires that surrounded him could not withstand such an exaggerated amount of damage. William easily slashed them with his sword. Their health points dropped significantly. It could almost be said, apart from legends of the same level, even 3 to 5 epic bloodline professionals of the same level would not be enough for him to kill. The higher the level, the more prominent William's legendary bloodline was. The next moment, he stretched out his hand and snapped his fingers. Dozens of lightning bolts pierced through the forest above his head and fell straight down. One of the unlucky vampires was careless and was immediately struck into a state of paralysis. William stepped forward and unleashed a long and narrow sword energy that flashed with lightning, instantly chopping off the vampire's head. Are you kidding me? His defense is so strong, and his damage is so crazy. Blood Devil inhaled a breath of cold air. He had slashed William more than 10 times, but William was still full of energy. It was obvious that William had not suffered any serious injuries. However, the death of just one subordinate was nothing to worry about. The Blood Demon raised his hand slightly. The other two saw his gesture and used the blood manipulation technique at the same time. Bang, bang, bang. A series of muffled explosions rang out. William's face flushed red as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Even his eyes were bloodshot. But this seemingly serious injury was weakened by the magic scroll, so it did not cause too much damage. His health points were still above 20,000. Although his internal organs were severely injured, some of the key blood vessels, arteries, and capillaries under his skin were still stable. The body of steel was not just a layer of skin. The flesh and blood under his skin were also like steel and iron. However, the only weakness was his internal organs. This also meant that the blood manipulation technique had been weakened by 50% under the defense of the body of steel and the magic scroll. Hand of Soul. William was not a player who only took hits and did not attack. He suddenly stretched out a huge, transparent palm and instantly grabbed a vampire who was wandering at the side. The moment he pulled the vampire over, he grabbed him and turned him around to deal a wave of friendly damage. Then, his left hand pierced through the vampire's chest. He crushed the heart with one grip. The eyes of the vampire in front of him widened. It did not matter if his heart was crushed. He could still recover. He wanted to show an expression that said, "I can still be saved," but he was now in a state of near death. William used a sacrificial skill and forcefully pulled out a soul shadow from the terrified mind of the old man. In the next second, the soul dissipated and transformed into crystal clear white light that slowly entered William's body. William's injuries were recovering at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. What is this? Blood Devil and the other vampire could not help but be stunned. Why was the Lord of the City of Dawn so much stronger than 2 days ago? It was not just a matter of being able to take hits. He was able to take hits, was perverted, and could recover health points. William casually threw away the already dead vampire. He did not want to say that his group attack was more powerful, especially when he liked to have minions by his side. So he looked at Blood Devil and coldly laughed. "Come on, my injuries have recovered. If you are so capable, suck my blood. Let's see who is faster." D*M*N. I can't take it anymore. Blood Ghost, Blood Shadow. Let's kill him together. Blood Devil asked the others to hold back Burn Cinder and the others. He wanted to gather the 3 most powerful Blood Shadow assassins and kill William in advance. William was slightly shocked, but he still activated his battle energy shield. He did not panic in the face of danger, because Blood Devil, Blood Shadow, and Blood Ghost were not only notorious in his previous life, but they were also extremely difficult to deal with legendary bosses. But since they were famous, it was inevitable that William knew them very well. It was also inevitable that after they died, they became a dungeon that had been raided by the players countless times. It could be said that, besides the fact that William could not predict or evade blood control, he also knew that these 3 guys were perverted enough to wear the same underwear with a small bat printed on it. As for some of the big moves in their hands, it was even more traceable. And as an assassin, the scariest thing was that someone knew you very well. If that happened, it would be a joke to kill someone without them knowing. Therefore, when William faced the 3 of them, he pursued his battle instincts. He chose the best time to use the most critical skills, the most suitable position, and the most effective moves. Burn Cinder and the others did not feel any pressure when facing the epic and grandmaster bloodlines of the same level. The only problem was that they were being held back and could not help their prince for a short period of time. But now, William was showing off his skills. It could be said that he was dancing on the tip of a knife. Brian Scarlet Flame's titanium alloy eyes were almost blinded by William's actions. Gosh, he dodged that. Gonlin, how did he know that Blood Shadow would appear in his shadow? How is that possible? I fought with Blood Ghost for a long time, but I can't tell how he became invisible. Has Prince William been hiding his strength? Diablo and the others were dumbfounded. They kept thinking, and the more they thought about it, the more afraid they became. They did not expect Prince William to be so strong, but he was still hiding his strength? Was this the limit of his true strength? Or maybe not. That's just 2F*King Awesome. Chapter 270. The three gay blood devils were on the verge of breaking down. Not only was William resistant to attacks, but he also recovered quickly. He also had godly prediction abilities. They did not dare to look directly into William's eyes. This was because they always felt that they had been seen through and seen through. Even their little secrets and ultimate moves had been clearly seen through by him. Furthermore, William had seen through the three of them's homosexual activities. For some unknown reason, the three of them had this feeling in their hearts. We can only use blood control, but he still has magic scrolls. The blood devil was on the verge of breaking down. He and his two companions looked at each other. They could only choose to retreat. It was not that they could not continue fighting. If they continued fighting, their hearts would break down. William had become a demon in their hearts. This would be detrimental to their future growth and breakthroughs. They would avoid William as much as they could. They would find another day to take revenge. That was how the blood devil comforted himself. As for the words, "I can be destroyed, but not defeated," it was enough for them to hear. There was only a way out if they were alive. If they were dead, there would be no way out. They could only bathe in the Styx River. Moreover, he wanted to wait. When he broke through to the Grandmaster level and had a qualitative change in his strength, he would definitely take William's head. Hence, the blood devil decisively waved his hand and chose to retreat. At the same time, he shouted, "I'll let you off. But the next time you enter the Nightmare Forest, you'll die. The territory of the Emerald Grand Duchy is not a place for outsiders to invade." William glanced at Brian Scarlet Flame, who seemed to be deep in thought. The corners of his mouth twitched. The blood devil was not a joke. He was trying to kill the Emerald Grand Duchy. However, when he saw that the blood devil was about to leave, he became unhappy. He took a few steps forward and said, "Since when did the Nightmare Forest belong to the Emerald Grand Duchy? That's none of your business. If I say so, then so be it." William laughed and said, "You said you'll let us off, but I don't intend to let you off. Have I been in the Nightmare Forest all this while? I haven't left yet." The blood devil narrowed his eyes. "If His Majesty did not send me a message, I would have killed you. Let's go." Then he snorted and led his companions to transform into bats, disappearing into the sky. There were a few reasons why they left so quickly. The Nightmare Forest was close to the Red Fire Kingdom. Who knew if Brian Scarlet Flame had found any reinforcements? If they really thought that it was a Grandmaster or even an epic title powerhouse, then they would definitely die. In any case, they would definitely lose the love of the Oni Father. Furthermore, Blood Devil and the others were geniuses, and every genius had their own pride. The three of them had joined forces, but they couldn't defeat William for a long time. William had even seen through their plan. This was a huge blow to them. Being indecisive was what a woman should do, and running when it was time to run was what a real man should do. What do you mean by not fearing death? QTMB, we vampires do not have such principles. Especially now, there was no need to rush revenge. The three of them had great potential, and there would be plenty of opportunities in the future. Moreover, Blood Devil didn't believe that William would always have a group of powerful people following him. When the prince saw them leave, he frowned slightly. He relied on the Sword of Curses to recover his HP. If he couldn't hit someone, he wouldn't be able to recover. Under normal circumstances, his HP recovery rate was only 50% of his constitution. In other words, he could recover 300 HP per second. But it was not enough in the face of such a fierce attack. Unless he used the life potion, it would be a huge price to pay. They're gone. They're finally gone. Brian heaved a sigh of relief. He had finally seen the strength of William and his companions. Whether it was Burned Cinder, Diablo, or Whales, they had their own specialties. Under certain circumstances, none of them was weaker than Brian. William Blackleaf, the Lord of the City of Dawn, had impressed him. Originally, Brian thought that William's strength was only average and about the same as theirs. But now, it seemed that William was obviously stronger than them. Brian's admiration for William continued to increase. His affinity with William was also slowly increasing. It had been a long time since he had seen a man who was stronger than him. William sensed Brian's gaze and smiled. "Oh, that gaze. Is it the feeling of first love?" Brian hurriedly shook his head. He was straight. His fiancée was the princess of the neighboring kingdom. How could he have such feelings for a man? Could it be? Brian suddenly looked at William, his eyes, mouth, and nose. He could not help but swallow his saliva. Could it be that he's a woman disguised as a man? I have to say, some female elves of the elven race seem to have such a hobby. Brian, who had his butthole exploded, suddenly fell into a reverie. William did not care about Brian. He did not know what Brian was thinking. Otherwise, he would definitely beat the sh*t out of Brian and make his butthole explode again. William was thinking about how to deal with the power of the Dark City in the future. The Blood Devils must have recognized me. Or rather, they know that I have the blood essence of the Blood Dragon map. Otherwise, they must have come for the blood fruit. William quickly thought of this. In this magical era, many secrets were no longer secrets. In the face of strange magic, many secrets were no longer secrets. Back then, Osmond Lothar had slowly become the Lord of the Dark City and eventually the King of the Vampires. He had not only relied on luck. He must have had something that others did not know. William did not know that an old fortune-teller was hiding in Osmond's lair. That old man was cunning. Even when Osmond was killed by the plot in William's previous life, the old man did not appear. Naturally, William did not know about this hidden plot. But now, there was an obvious situation. The Dark City's affinity with William had decreased by 25,000 points. It seemed that the blood fruit alone could not achieve such a result. That should be the blood essence of the Blood Dragon map. But this meant that after the players of the City of Dawn came to Emerald Grand Duchy, if they entered the Nightmare Forest to fight monsters, they would inevitably have conflicts with the Dark City. Dawn and darkness? TSK. They were really fated. But then again, William did not have to worry about the players. He suddenly understood. It would be 2 years before the players would come online again. Why was he worrying so early? Perhaps when the players came online, William would have cleared the game in version 3.0. Thinking about this, the prince could not help but twitch his mouth. This is really hard to say. Although my leveling speed will be much slower after the players leave, I know a lot of quests. As long as I complete all of them, I will definitely be able to become a Grandmaster in 2 years. While William was thinking, Brian suddenly strutted over and patted William's shoulder. But William shook his shoulder in disgust. But this only deepened Brian's suspicions. So he said, "The Redfire Kingdom is my territory, and I'll treat you. We'll eat, drink, and be merry. The best restaurant in the city, the most exciting massage bath, and the brothel with the most beautiful women. Are you interested?" Ahem. Wales coughed twice. He glanced at Brian. He did not think that he could afford to treat Brian. After all, he had not paid the 4 of them with magical stones. Brian noticed that he was being looked at with disdain and immediately said angrily, Come. I'll pay 12,000 magical stones now. When we reach the Red Fire Kingdom, if I say it's a dragon, then it'll be a dragon. If you can eat me up, I'll give it to you." Once he said that, the eyes of Burned Cinder and the others lit up. The 3 of them said, "You must keep your promise. Let's go." Brian glanced at the calm William. Just as he was about to say something, William coughed and said, "I'll pass. As long as I'm full, I'll be satisfied. Anything will do." "Yes, anything will do. As long as it's available in the Red Fire Kingdom, you can eat whatever you want," Brian said shamelessly. William beamed and said, "That's great. I haven't eaten dragon meat for a long time." Yes. Dragon heart meat. I like to eat fire dragons." Burned Cinder licked his lips. Wales hurriedly said, "Earth dragon. I'll make it clear. I want the meat of an earth dragon. I haven't eaten it before." Diablo glanced at Brian, whose face had darkened. He patted Brian's shoulder to console him. "I'm not good at food. Just find me 100 beautiful women to spend the night with." "Are you crazy? Do you want to die?" The corners of Brian's mouth twitched. "No, I'm just invincible." Diablo sighed nonchalantly. As a metal element warrior and mage, he could control the metal elements in his body. He would not fall even if he wanted to. But this sentence of his, instantly, Whales and Violent Dragon dispelled their evil intentions. After all, going to a brothel with Diablo would definitely boost Diablo's morale and diminish their own prestige. Another 2 days passed. The 5 of them finally arrived at the border of the Red Fire Kingdom. When they arrived at a large city, they rode on flying magical beasts. It took them a few hours to reach the Red Fire Kingdom. This was the first time William and his companions rode on tamed flying magical beasts. The types of flying magical beasts that were tamed by the human empires and kingdoms were similar. The most expensive and rare flying magical beasts were the dragons and phoenixes, which were battle mounts. As for the flying magical beasts that were specialized in transporting humans, the most powerful one was the strategic-level colossal whale. The colossal whale was born with the ability to fly. It was born in the clouds when it was young. It survived by devouring magic and various microorganisms. It could carry thousands or even tens of thousands of people. The colossal whale could be more than 10,000 meters long. It looked terrifying, but it was very gentle. As long as one did not provoke it, the colossal whale would not care about other mosquito-sized creatures. But if he really provoked it, it would be furious. Even a great dragon might not be a match for it. The second type of magical beast was the winged bird, which had 3 pairs of wings and a body length of tens of meters. It could carry many people on its back. Its combat power was low, but could fly very fast. There were also other magical beasts, such as eagles and various birds. As for the griffins, after these magical beasts were tamed, those with lower bloodline potential would be used as transportation tools, while those with higher bloodline potential would be used as mounts by the warriors. They arrived at the Red Fire Kingdom's capital. Brian did not bring them to have fun. Instead, he immediately brought them into the palace to complain to Uncle King.